Chapter 16:10. Clang. With a deafening roar, the overwhelming fist power burst out, shaking Qi Wushu's hand. The white bone spear flew out of his hand in an instant, and the surging fist power had already arrived. What a terrifying power! Qi Wushu's face changed greatly. On his chest, blazing purple thunder and lightning suddenly appeared and turned into a mysterious thunder totem, blocking Lin Sun's punch. Boom! The fist power collided with the thunder totem. At this moment, Qi Wushu was blown away, bleeding from his mouth and nose and seeing stars. He couldn't help but be shocked. Lin Sun had already taken advantage of the situation to attack again. With the sound of swords, torrents of Taishian sword qi spread out in the void. Brilliant sword qi covered the heavens and the earth, and it filled the world. 33 heavy swords. Qi Wushu was scared out of his wits. At this moment, a sense of suffocation, despair, and helplessness filled his whole body, making him completely terrified. There was no time to think. He tried his best to operate his strongest life-saving means. In an instant, a piece of human skin branded with dense blood-colored tattoos appeared. Emperor's Metamorphosis. This piece of human skin was left by a sage of the Qi imperial clan after he failed to practice. It was carefully collected and engraved with mysterious totem Taoist patterns. It was an incredible treasure, even more powerful than a holy treasure. It had a wisp of Emperor's Qi, which was extremely terrifying. Such a treasure, even in the Qi imperial clan, was a peerless treasure. Not only was its quantity limited, but it was also one less treasure if it was lost. If Qi Wushu wasn't the leader of the younger generation in the Jili ancient domain, it would be impossible for him to have such a treasure with his status and identity in the Qi imperial clan. Boom! The Emperor's Metamorphosis glowed and produced a terrible totem. Vaguely, there seemed to be an Emperor's voice resounding, grand and boundless, shocking the 9 heavens. When the layers of sword qi rushed over, it immediately produced a fierce collision sound. It was blocked. At this moment, Qi Wushu felt that he had escaped from death. He was still in shock. However, before he could heave a sigh of relief, the surging streams of sword qi smashed down like stormy waves, and their might accumulated and rose steadily. Then, the monarch's remains began to tremble violently. The totem Dao patterns were crushed and exploded inch by the peerlessly sharp sword qi torrents. In the blink of an eye, the Emperor's Metamorphosis was torn open with a horrifying sound of collisions that shocked even ghosts and gods. Rumble! In the next moment, Qi Wushu felt a piercing pain in his eyes as his entire body was drowned by the boundlessly vast sword qi, causing his flesh, blood, tendons, and bones to seem as if they'd been dismembered, and they rustled as they shattered into pieces. No! What sword Dao inheritance is this? Why is it so terrifying? In the torrent of sword qi, Qi Wushu let out a shrill howl, and his whole person showed a horrified and unwilling aura. But right after that, 33 waves of sword qi arrived and completely drowned him and his voice. Looking down from the sky, the sword qi was like a torrent, breaking through the void of the universe and completely erasing Qi Wushu from the world. It took a long time to describe, but in fact, from Lin Sun's sudden appearance from the heaven-suppressing and sea-calming formation, to punching the bone spear, to killing the monarch's remains, to Qi Wushu's encounter, it all happened in a flash. No one expected that Lin Sun dared to go out of the formation to fight against Qi Wushu, and no one expected that Qi Wushu would be completely crushed and killed on the spot as soon as the confrontation began. Therefore, when Kun Xiaoyu and others wanted to help, it was too late. They could only watch such a shocking scene happen. So strong. This was everyone's first impression. Lin Sun's domineering posture made their hair stand on end, and their minds were impacted. Immediately their faces changed. Qi Wushu. He was the leader of the Jili ancient domain camp, a peerless figure who could command the wind and clouds, and a leader of the Qi clan's venerable sovereign. His name had long been known throughout the region, and his combat strength was obvious to all. But now he died here. For the camp of the Gili ancient region, this was destined to be a heavy blow, and for everyone present, they couldn't help but feel sad and frightened. Just like this, he died? This was too shocking. At the same time, after Jian Qingchen, Qi Wushu was the second leader to die in Lin Sun's hands. Now there were only 6 of the 8 skills of green darkness left. For Lin Sun, it was imperative to kill Qi Wushu. Although the 1,000 Ghost formation was extremely powerful, none of the enemies it had killed so far had a leader. As Zhu Yingkong said, the formation could only last for a quarter of an hour under full operation. Now more than half of the time had passed. In the remaining time, it was impossible to cause a substantial blow to those leaders by relying on the power of the formation. Therefore, Lin Sun did not hesitate to attack. It was no exaggeration to say that even if it was a one-on-one confrontation, Lin Sun had absolute confidence to kill Qi Wushu. What's more, with the power of the formation restraining him, he had an innate advantage when dealing with Qi Wushu. When he really attacked, Lin Sun did not hold back either. One punch was a punch that shook the sky, and one sword was the 33 heavy sword. They were all martial arts power that he had completely integrated. Under such circumstances, there was no doubt that Qi Wushu would die. It should be known that when Lin Sun killed Jian Qingchen, his cultivation was at the initial level of true sage Juxiu. Now, he was at the middle level of true sage Juxiu. Let's attack together and kill him. Kill. Kuan Xiaoyu and the others roared and rushed towards Lin Sun together. All of their eyes were wide open and their faces were livid. All the accumulated anger and hatred in their hearts completely erupted at the moment of Qi Wushu's sudden death. However, their reaction was a step too slow. After killing Qi Wushu, Lin Sun had already returned to the heaven-suppressing and sea-calming formation in a flash. This caused all the attacks of Kuan Xiaoyu and the others to be blocked by the power of the formation. They could not hurt Lin Sun at all. Under Lin Sun's control, the flying immortal ghosts and the terrifying power of heaven and earth continued to oppress and trap them. This feeling of suffocation almost drove them crazy. Lin Sun, do you dare to come out and fight? Lai Qian spoke, imitating Qi Wushu and provoking Lin Sun. However, his goal was very simple. He just wanted to lure Lin Sun out. Lin Sun did not even think and directly refused. What are you panicking for? When the power of the formation is exhausted, if you are still alive, I will send you to reincarnate. This made Lai Qian so angry that his face turned green and he started cursing. However, Lin Sun turned a deaf ear to him. Rumble. The formation operated and the Tao patterns surged. The power of heaven and earth gathered into heavenly swords and flashed in the formation. They slashed, sliced, pierced. Groups after groups of flying immortal ghosts charged fearlessly, causing Kuan Xiaoyu and the others to be in an extremely passive situation. Moreover, the casualties were still happening. Until now, more than 40 of the top sages of the 8 regions had been killed. Including Kuan Xiaoyu and the others, there were only slightly more than 20 people left. Simply put, one formation had caused more than half of them to die. Everyone, hold on a little longer. This formation is about to collapse. Zhu Yingkong shouted to remind everyone. Bang! In the heaven and sea suppression formation, Lin Sun suddenly took out the insignificant bow, pulled the bowstring, and shot an arrow. Wind and thunder surged, and the void was torn like paper. In the field, Shi Pohei was being besieged by a group of flying immortal ghosts. At this moment, he was keenly aware of a fatal attack. Without any hesitation, he chose to dodge. However, at the same time, a heavenly sword slashed down from the sky, sealing off his retreat. Not good. Shi Pohei was so shocked that his soul almost flew out of his body. His face was distorted, and he tried his best to resist. Boom! The divine arrow flew across the sky, the heavenly sword slashed down, and several flying immortal ghosts attacked. It was like an inescapable net had descended. No matter how amazing Pohe's combat power was, his body was instantly pierced by the blue sky arrow. His whole body was sent flying, and he was seriously injured. If Kuan Xiaoyu hadn't saved him in time, he would have been torn apart by a group of flying immortal ghosts. Lin Sun was not surprised that he couldn't kill Pohe. He looked calm, and without hesitation, he pulled the insignificant bow and began to shoot again. Bang! 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 The dense roar of thunder resounded, making the world tremble. A series of divine arrows swept out, bursting between the 9 heavens and 10 earths. Originally, Kuan Xiaoyu and others were in a very passive and dangerous situation. Now they were covered by Lin Sun's storm-like arrows, which caused a lot of casualties in a short time. Some people were smashed by the divine arrows, and their flesh and blood flew like rain. Some people avoided the divine arrows, but were killed by the sudden arrival of the heavenly sword. Some people were swarmed by the flying immortal ghosts, and they were trapped and killed in the shrill and angry roars. In just a dozen breaths, only Kuan Xiaoyu, Xue Qingyi, Lai Qian, Zhu Yingkong, Pohe, and Hua Hongxiao were left in the field. All the others died on the spot. Kuan Xiaoyu and others were more or less injured. Their clothes were stained with blood, and their hair was disheveled. They looked quite embarrassed. The most serious one was Pohe, who almost died. Now he was seriously injured. Even if he kept taking all kinds of healing medicine, it was difficult for him to recover completely in a short time. At this time, Lin Sun was unscathed, and his clothes were spotless. But he had consumed a lot of physical strength. He was swallowing and refining all kinds of magic medicine to replenish his strength. Comparing the two, the advantage was obvious. This hatred is absolutely irreconcilable. Lin Sun, I will never forgive you! Kuan Xiaoyu shouted angrily. At this time, Lin Sun put away the insignificant bow. His black eyes were cold, and he glanced at Kuan Xiaoyu and others, saying, "It doesn't matter whether there is this formation or not. What I'm most worried about now is that you don't dare to fight to the death and flee." His words made Kuan Xiaoyu and others furious. However, just as they were about to speak, they felt a sudden change in the heavens and earth. The terrifying pressure instantly dissipated. In the vast mountains and rivers, the formations and restrictions that were everywhere were also annihilated like tidewater. The big formation collapsed. The fairy realm ghosts that were originally controlled by the formation's power were now only left with a few hundred of them. At this moment, they had clearly recovered their instincts. When they sensed the terrifying might of Kuan Xiaoyu and the others, they no longer attacked fearlessly. Instead, they chose to escape. For a time, all the restraints that had been pressing on them were gone, which made Kuan Xiaoyu and others feel like a trapped dragon rising to the sky, or a tiger returning to the forest. And their eyes became cold and violent at this moment when they looked at Lin Sun. I promised to save the manuscript, but I was so busy these days that I didn't save a word. I want to cry but have no tears. How can I spend the new year? Chapter 16:11. Kill! Kuan Xiaoyu and the others moved almost immediately. They couldn't control their anger and hatred at all. Boom! Kuan Xiaoyu's figure spread out and a huge rock saint image appeared behind him. It was boundless and covered the sky. His power skyrocketed and broke through the air to kill. Every punch he threw drew on the momentum of Zhou Su, causing the mountains and rivers to tremble. Kuan's soaring technique. This supreme inheritance, when cultivated to the extreme, could shatter the galaxy and shatter the sky. It would completely transcend the shackles of the world order and rise above Zhou Su. Lead! Zhu Yingkong's purple eyes were like lightning as he drew a line in the air with his hands. In the void, purple lightning was like a sea, as if a calamity was coming. Tut! A white rainbow rushed out from Lai Qian's lips. Looking closely, it was a shining flying sword. The sword was like a shuttle, sprinkling millions of flames and light rain, burning the sky and earth. At the same time, Hua Hongxiao and Xue Qingyi also made their moves, displaying their own Taoism and technique. At that moment, it was as if 5 overlords had descended to the world. Their terrifying aura covered a radius of 8,000 feet, causing the mountains and rivers to lose their color. Only Shirpohe was too seriously injured and stayed far away, seizing the time to recover. Great! Lin Sun's black hair flew in the wind, and his black eyes burst out with blazing light. At this instant, his battle intent erupted abruptly. His tall figure was like a furnace of chaos, and the essence, energy, and spirit in his entire body seethed and blazed. They were fused into one, and they revealed an extremely perfect aura. An indescribably terrifying power also spread from his body, as if a demon from the eternal abyss had awakened at this moment. Boom! With his body as the center, the void collapsed in disorder, as if it couldn't bear the power. Today, I will kill my way to the 9 regions battlefield, and no one will dare to call themselves the king. With a cold and indifferent voice, Lin Sun stepped on the air without dodging. A big abyss floated behind him, as if it could swallow the sky. Bang! A punch collided with Kuan Xiaoyu, who was the first to rush over. It was like a koan of the northern underworld colliding with a boundless abyss in an instant. Light roared and divine rays covered the sky. Kuan Xiaoyu's body shook and he staggered back, his expression changing. Rumble! However, Lin Sun had already stretched out his arms and punched out with his fist, which smashed the purple thunderstorm all over the sky like crushing dry weeds and smashing rotten wood. Zhuingkong's figure stiffened. That violet thunderstorm was the supreme inheritance of the Torch Dragon bloodline, the violet sky myriad calamity scripture. Once it was executed, violet energy would rise from the east, and the thunderstorm would rage. It possessed the might to destroy the heavens and the earth, and it was said to be one of the 4 great Tao scriptures of the ancient Yin territory. But now it was blown away by Lin Sun. This was not the end. Lin Sun, who was bathed in the raging lightning, pressed out his finger again casually. Suddenly, a flying sword flew out and pierced Lin Sun's throat. But under Lin Sun's finger, even if the attack was in front of him, it seemed to be separated by a world. So close, yet worlds apart. With the change of Lin Sun's finger force, it turned into the momentary spring and autumn again. With a bang, the shining flying sword was severely hit away. Lai Qian's body, which was connected to the flying sword's mind, swayed. His blood and qi churned, and he almost coughed out blood. Boom! At this moment, 33 torrents of sword qi rushed out of Lin Sun's body, sweeping towards Xueqingyi and Hua Hongxiao like an ocean of sword qi sweeping across the sky. In an instant, a rain of light burst out and screams rang out. Xueqingyi and Hua Hongxiao's attacks were defeated. Like duckweeds slapped by stormy waves, their bodies were sent flying. In an instant, Lin Sun successively displayed the heaven-shaking punch, void-breaking finger of divination, and 33 strikes, breaking through the siege and repelling the 5 leaders' attacks. His arrogant attitude and domineering power shocked everyone present. How is this possible? Compared to the battle at the Black Cliff Sea, his cultivation has broken through again. He has already begun to condense his own saint method. Damn it! Kuan Xiaoyu and the others had a rare solemn look on their faces. No matter how resentful they were, the terrifying power Lin Sun displayed made them tremble. He was too strong. They looked at each other, and at the same time, they attacked with all their strength again. This time, all of them utilized their trump cards, executed peerless Tao arts, or utilized saint artifacts that possessed shocking lethality. Boom! For a moment, the mountains and rivers were filled with divine light like thunder, resounding through the 9 heavens and 10 earths. The mighty and blazing saber light swept across and drowned the world. The 5 leaders of each domain attacked Lin Sun. Each of them was an overlord in the peerless true sage realm, so one could imagine how terrifying their combat power was. However, the power Lin Sun displayed was equally shocking. Although he was alone, his power was like the grand sun in the sky, brilliant and boundless. Their figures fought from the sky to the ground, moving between the mountains and rivers. Wherever they passed, the clouds exploded, the void collapsed, and the terrifying Taoist light swept across, surging between heaven and earth. Some flying immortals and ghosts comparable to peerless sages did not even have time to escape before they were crushed and wiped out on the spot. This battle could be said to be the most unprecedented battle since the start of the Battle of the Nine Regions. It was enough to shock the world and amaze the world. Whether it was in the ancient desolation domain or the other 8 domains, it would definitely cause a stir in the world and attract everyone's attention. It should be known that the true sage realm was an existence that countless cultivators could look up to. They dominated the mountains and rivers, and their power was boundless. Peerless sages were existences that many true sages had to bow their heads and respect. For the peerless sages of the 9 regions, peerless figures like Lin Sun, Kuan Xiaoyu, Zhu Yingkong, and Xue Qingyi were the overlords who stood at the peak of this realm. They were like dominators, so they had to respect and look up to them. The battle that broke out at this time was a battle between the peerless overlords and the true sage realm, so the impact was naturally extraordinary. It was unknown how many years it would take to see a battle like this. This guy is simply a monster. He can be compared with those freaks on the ancient road of starry sky, Shi Pohei, who had been staying far away from the battle and taking the time to heal his injuries, was terrified and frightened when he saw Lin Sun fighting against the 5 of them. He had heard that on the ancient road of starry sky, there were many peerless figures who claimed to be invincible in the true sage realm. Each of them was so terrifying that they couldn't be measured by common sense. They were regarded as the strongest true sage under the starry sky and above the peak. Shi Pohei didn't believe it before, but when he saw Lin Sun at this moment, he vaguely felt that the rumor might not be false. There really were monsters in this world that couldn't be measured by common sense. For example, Lin Sun came out of the barren and dilapidated ancient desolation domain. At first, no one cared about him and no one knew his name. However, in the short span of less than 2 years, he had risen to power with unparalleled might, slaughtering his way through the 8 regions, and countless saints had died at his hands. Who wouldn't be shocked by his monstrous might and invincible demeanor? If this man doesn't die sooner or later, he will become a common problem for the 8 regions. Shi Pohei didn't dare to imagine what kind of terrible power Lin Sun would have when he sought the road of the great emperor with his foundation and talent. At that time, who in the 9 regions could be his opponent? Suddenly, Shi Pohei's face changed slightly, and his figure flashed. Whoosh! In the place where he originally stood, a wisp of sword light appeared. When the sword light dissipated, Little Silver's figure appeared. His clothes were whiter than snow, and his face was handsome and cold. On his shoulder, the sky-splitting butterfly flapped its wings, and its breath was cold and frightening. Seriously injured and dying, you still have such vigilant consciousness and instinct. You deserve to be one of the 8 skills of green darkness. Little Silver tooted. When a tiger falls to the plains, he will be bullied by a dog. Shi Pohei sighed in his heart, feeling a kind of anger and humiliation. If he was in his peak state, he would have slapped Lin Sun to death in the face of such provocation. Unfortunately, you are doomed to fail this time. As he spoke, Little Silver attacked again, and his figure was invisible. Boom! Shi Pohei no longer cared about healing his wounds and fought hard. What gave him a headache was that when Little Silver and the sky-split demonic butterfly worked together, they were like assassins who came and went without a trace, impossible to guard against and boundlessly treacherous. In just a moment, Shi Pohei was injured. He was seriously injured, and his opponents were a descendant of the spirit-eating insect and a descendant of the sky-splitting butterfly. One was more powerful and talented than the other. After they became saints, they were no longer comparable to ordinary saints. If he was in his heyday, Shi Pohei still had the means to suppress them, but now he was in danger. In the distance, Kuan Xiaoyu and the other 4 people attacked together, but they couldn't suppress Lin Sun at all, so it was impossible for them to save him. Sure, Pohei couldn't help feeling cold and sad. Was he going to die in the hands of 2 little bugs today? At the same time, Kuan Xiaoyu and the others were also more and more frightened. Lin Sun's momentum was getting stronger and stronger, putting more and more pressure on them. If they hadn't cooperated with each other, they would have been defeated by him one by one. Cut! Suddenly, Lin Sun shouted softly, and the broken sword suddenly swept out. Like a stream of light that tore the shackles of ancient times, it cut through the sky. Puff! A bloody head was thrown into the air. Hua Hongxiao, the leader of the Dongsang ancient domain, was cut off by the broken sword at this moment. Before his headless body fell to the ground, it was smashed by the terrifying battle waves, and a rain of blood burst out. Before he died, his eyes were wide open and filled with confusion, as if he couldn't believe it. And this bloody scene of death was like a heavy hammer that smashed the hearts of Kuan Xiaoyu and the others, making them completely terrified. The 5 of them had joined forces, but they couldn't do anything to him? At this moment, their fighting spirit was shaken. Anyone who could become a leader of a domain was a person with a strong will and a heart of steel. They were used to great storms and waves. Even when they were trapped in the Thousand Ghosts formation, it didn't shake their fighting spirit. But now, in a head-on confrontation, under the circumstances that the 5 of them had joined forces, Lin Sun had taken the opportunity to kill one of them. This was undoubtedly a heavy blow. At this moment, the anger and hatred in their hearts were replaced by a horrifying chill, causing their bodies to feel cold. Could it be this guy was already invincible in this realm? Boom! Not long after, an earth-shattering roar resounded. Endless sword chi swept out from the Great Way immeasurable bottle, like an avalanche, and headed straight for Lai Qian. Chapter 16:12. Lai Qian had already seen the power of the 33 strike. Earlier, Qi Wushu had suffered such a terrifying strike and perished. Therefore, when he saw Lin Sun use this sword, Lai Qian didn't even think about it. He put his hands together and said, "Suppress." With a rumble, a huge red cauldron with raging flames floated in the air, as if it was going to melt the universe and incinerate the galaxy. The fluctuation of the divine Tao made the whole world covered in dazzling flames. The Great Burning Cauldron. This treasure was one of the 7 great divine weapons of the Skyfire ancient region, and it had been passed down for an extremely long time. Supposedly, a strand of natural flame essence that was born during the primeval times was sealed within it. Later on, 100 great figures of the past joined forces to inscribe 3,600 Saint Tao markings on it. It could be said to contain the 100 sages Tao in one cauldron, and its power was unpredictable. At the same time, this treasure was Lai Qian's greatest reliance. In just a moment, Lai Qian's face changed, and he suddenly cried out, "How is this possible?" The 33-tier swords transformed into a vast ocean of sword qi that swept out fiercely, blasting the great burning sky cauldron away, causing it to wail incessantly. It couldn't even withstand one blow. Rumble the next moment, Lai Qian was covered by the torrent of sword qi. He struggled madly and took out all kinds of treasures, such as an ancient bronze lamp, a yellowed scroll, a seal as big as a mountain, and a talisman with thunder and lightning surging, but without exception, they were all broken by the torrent of sword qi. That kind of sword qi could be described as unparalleled sharpness, as brilliant as the sun. It was unbelievably powerful. In the end, the defense around Lai Qian's body was broken by the dense sword qi. His head, limbs, and torso exploded inch by inch under the bombardment of sword qi. Flesh and blood splattered everywhere. "I can't accept this. I can't accept this." Lai Qian let out a roar that resounded through the world. But his voice stopped abruptly. When the torrent of sword qi disappeared, the leader of the Heaven-Fire ancient region was also killed after Jian Qingchen, Qi Wushu, and Hua Hongxiao. Lai Qian had indeed seen the terror of the 33 strikes of sword qi, but he didn't know that the power of the 33 strikes of sword qi had already doubled after being strengthened by the Great Way bottle. This was also the reason why he was killed. All of this took a long time to describe, but in reality, it was unimaginably fast in the midst of an intense battle. Lin Sun did not even look at Lai Qian as he charged towards Kuan Xiaoyu, Xueqingyi, and Zhu Yingkong. His ferocious aura surged into the sky as if he was the only one left standing. At this moment, Kuan Xiaoyu and the other two were completely disappointed. They were only surprised and puzzled by Jian Qingchen's death, but they didn't feel much about it. When Feng Wushu died, they all felt solemn. All of them regarded Lin Sun as the most difficult enemy and no longer had any reservations. But now, even if they joined forces, they still couldn't do anything to Lin Sun. On the contrary, Hua Hongxiao and Lai Qian were killed one after another. This caused them to start to feel terrified and uneasy, so how could they not feel bitterly disappointed? The bloody light in the sky surged endlessly like a tide, and the sound of Saint Perishing's lament resounded endlessly, causing one's heart to palpitate with fear. What to do? Kuan Xiaoyu, Xueqingyi, and Zhu Yingkong's faces were ashen and gloomy. At this moment, Lin Sun was too powerful. He was like a demon with an invincible momentum. Every move he made had the power to suppress a realm and make him the only one in the world. How were they supposed to fight him? Kuan Xiaoyu and the others had never imagined that Lin Sun would be so ferocious by himself without the help of the Grand Formation. Save me! Save me! It wasn't long before Shi Pohei's anxious, unwilling, and terrified cry resounded from afar, and it tore through the sky. The expressions of Kuan Xiaoyu and the others changed. They raised their eyes and looked over. They saw Shi Pohei's body had been torn apart extremely far away, and his blood sprayed through the sky. A demonic sky-split butterfly appeared at the place where he perished. It was bathed in a scarlet rain of blood, and it seemed extremely mysterious and terrifying. He was dead. Shi Pohei, the leader of the ancient Star-Fiend region, had perished at this moment. 5 of the 8 absolutes of Green Hell had perished. Let's go! Kuan Xiaoyu, Xueqingyi, and Zhu Yingkong practically chose to flee at the same time. All of them seemed as if they'd gone mad, and they completely disregarded everything and fled for their lives. No matter how extraordinary their natural talent, how formidable their resources, and how dazzling their reputations were, they were completely panicked when they suffered such bloody blows repeatedly, and terror arose in their hearts. In this world, there were only a few people who weren't afraid of death. The more peerless a figure like Kuan Xiaoyu and the others was, the more they cherished their lives. On the contrary, those who were as humble as grass dared to risk their lives for a chance to survive because they had nothing to worry about. As the leader of a region, do you intend to flee like a stray dog? Where's your backbone? Where's your pride? Where's your face? Lin Sun's undisguised sarcasm sounded. He didn't slow down either, and he chased after them almost immediately. If he could kill Kuan Xiaoyu and the others in one fell swoop, then the 8 regions would definitely suffer a crushing defeat in this battle of the 9 regions, and there would be no possibility of a comeback. With Lin Sun's temperament, he naturally wouldn't miss such an opportunity. Buzz. He took a deep breath, and his figure was like a real dragon as he performed the mystery of the 9 transformations of the Calamity Dragon. Suddenly, his speed soared. In an instant, Lin Sun had already approached Xueqingyi, who was at the rear. Rise! With a loud shout from Lin Sun, the broken blade rose into the air and flashed away like a flash of light. The first cut of Tianyuan. Combining the mysteries of star, moon, burning sun, silence, life and death, and impermanence in one cut, how could such power be ordinary? Oh no! Xueqingyi felt a chill run down his spine. He felt a chill run down his spine, and his soul almost leapt out of his body. He could clearly feel the aura of death approaching. Moreover, with his combat strength, It was difficult for him to resist it even if he risked his life. This made Xueqingyi feel despair. Was he going to follow in the footsteps of Jian Qingchen and Feng Wushu? Little thief! I've finally found you! However, right at this critical moment, a voice that was chilly like ice suddenly resounded through the heavens and the earth. When the voice sounded, a purple light broke through the sky and came to Lin Sun. With a bang, it blocked Lin Sun's attack. The broken blade wailed and shook violently in the void. When the voice fell, a graceful figure appeared in the void, stepping on a lotus throne, and blocked Lin Sun's way. It was a woman in a green dress with peerless charm. Her eyebrows were as black as ink, her face was as beautiful as jade, and her eyes were as clear as a spring. Her black hair fell like a waterfall to her slender waist. Her clothes fluttered as she stood all alone on a green-colored lotus platform that seemed as if it was constructed from divine gold. Strands of light green Saint Tao laws coiled around her, and it caused her body to be crystalline and pure, causing her to seem like an otherworldly celestial maiden. She was indeed very beautiful, but also very scary. Even though she was standing alone, her aura caused the heavens and the earth to conform to her aura, and it produced a miraculous resonance. In just a moment, Lin Sun's black eyes suddenly narrowed. He felt a threat from this beautiful woman who suddenly appeared. He couldn't help but be shocked. This was the battle realm of fairies. Where did this woman come from? As for Kuan Xiaoyu, Xueqingyi, and Zhu Yingkong, all of them had astounded expressions as well. They seemed to have never imagined that such a celestial maiden would suddenly descend at this moment when they were fleeing for their lives. Moreover, she called Lin Sun a thief. This made Kuan Xiaoyu and the others' hearts tremble. Their originally frightened and panicked state of mind relaxed a lot. They stopped running and watched from afar. "Miss, you and I don't know each other, and it seems that you're not a cultivator from the 8 regions. Why are you stopping me?" Lin Sun frowned and quietly put away the broken blade. The woman's expression was cold. She stood on the green lotus throne and looked down at Lin Sun. "Thief, you stole the night jade vine of Xuanji Taoist sect, and you dare to say that you don't know each other?" Lin Sun was shocked. He finally realized the problem. Not long ago, he had broken a strange Taoist restriction formation and obtained a divine medicine that could be called a treasure of heaven and earth. At that time, he had wondered who the person who set up the formation was and why he was able to enter the fairy battlefield 8,000 years ago. Now it seemed that the restriction was left behind by the so-called Xuanji Taoist sect, and this woman had come to denounce him. However, Lin Sun wasn't afraid. What annoyed him was that this woman just had to come at this moment and interfere with his mission to kill Kuan Xiaoyu and the others. Naturally, he was very displeased, especially when this woman's eyes were cold and she had a high and mighty attitude. Who would be happy if she saw him as a thief? Lin Sun's expression remained unchanged, and he said indifferently, "How laughable. Such a treasure is an ownerless treasure nurtured by the heavens and earth. I obtained it with my own strength, so how could I steal it?" In the distance, Kuan Xiaoyu and the others relaxed even more. They roughly understood the reason, and they couldn't help but take pleasure in Lin Sun's misfortune. "You dare to do it but don't dare to admit it? You're asking for a beating." The woman's clear eyes were cold as she waved her hand. Boom! A green bolt of lightning descended from the sky. It was majestic like a green dragon, and it was filled with the terrifying aura of the divine path. The destructive aura it produced caused the surroundings to tremble. She attacked at the slightest disagreement, and she seemed extremely domineering and arrogant. Lin Sun waved his fist and met it head-on. Surprisingly, even though Lin Sun had finally resolved the woman's attack, he didn't gain any advantage. Lin Sun's black eyes flickered. He instantly determined that the woman's combat strength was at least not weaker than his own. This caused him to be surprised. This woman claimed to be from the Xuanji Taoist sect, but where was this sect? Could it be that she had refined her own Tao and created a technique that belonged to her? At the same time, the hearts of Kuan Xiaoyu and the others shook fiercely. A mere strike had made them realize that none of them were a match for this woman in a head-on confrontation. Who was she? Could she be a peerless genius from the ancient starry sky path? After that, Kuan Xiaoyu and the others couldn't help but become excited. No matter where this woman came from, at least at this moment, she regarded Lin Sun as an enemy. That was enough. At this moment, the peerlessly beautiful woman in a green dress also revealed a look of surprise. She didn't expect that Lin Sun would be able to block her attack. 3 Dao into 1 and you've reached a higher level. I didn't expect that a thief like you would be able to embark on this path of supreme invincibility. Chapter 16:13. As soon as the green-dressed woman finished speaking, she waved her hand. Suddenly, a dazzling green thunderbolt descended from the sky. Unlike before, this thunderbolt instantly condensed into an ancient and obscure seal, dazzling with green brilliance. Greenwood Divine Thunder Seal. Just by looking at it from afar, Kuan Xiaoyu and the others felt their scalps tingle as if they were facing a divine tribulation. Was this woman already invincible in this realm? Otherwise, how could she possess such terrifying power? A simple blow was enough to make people's hearts turn cold. Lin Sun's black eyes were cold. He was infuriated. Originally, he didn't intend to shed all pretenses of cordiality with her since there was no enmity between them. However, this woman attacked him without saying a word. She was so aggressive. As Lin Sun's chi moved, the Swanee seal emerged and completely integrated with the mysteries of the Calamity Dragon. It was just a seal, but it was like a real Swanee beast crossing the sky. It had the power to tear apart mountains and rivers and crush the sky. Boom! In the terrifying sound of collision, the world shook. It was like 2 ancient mountains colliding with each other. It was earth-shattering. In an instant, the figures of the green-dressed woman and Lin Sun swayed slightly. Then, their eyes collided in the void, and both of them were filled with killing intent. "Fairy, do you need our help?" Suddenly, Kuan Xiaoyu asked in a clear voice. Xue Qingyi and Zhu Yingkong nodded. If they could take this opportunity to kill Lin Sun with the help of the green-dressed woman, it would undoubtedly be the best. It's just dealing with a little thief. Why do we need help? The green-dressed woman was very beautiful. She had immortal skin and divine bones. She stood in the void, and her beauty overshadowed everything in the world. However, she seemed extremely aloof and cold. From the beginning to the end, she showed a supreme attitude, as if she was looking down on the world. Even her words didn't conceal the domineering tone. There was no doubt that she had absolute confidence and foundation, which was why she had developed such a bearing. Kuan Xiaoyu and the others couldn't help but be stunned by this, and they were infuriated in their hearts. However, they didn't dare say anything because they discerned that this mysterious woman was extremely difficult to deal with. All of you are the leaders of a region, characters on the same level as the 8 absolutes of green destiny. But now, all of you were first killed by me to the point of wetting your pants in terror and fleeing in panic. Now, you even disregard your face and try to please a woman. Do you really not want your face anymore? In the distance, Lin Sun sneered, and his words were full of sarcasm and contempt. How could he not tell that Kuan Xiaoyu and the others wanted to use this woman to deal with him? Unfortunately, the woman did not appreciate his kindness at all. Kuan Xiaoyu and the rest were enraged and their expressions were extremely gloomy. But Lin Sun didn't bother to pay attention to them. He stepped into the void, his black hair fluttering in the wind, and exuded an oppressive aura. "And you ugly woman, do you really think I'm afraid of you? You said I'm ugly?" The woman in a green dress was stunned and seemed to be in disbelief, and a wisp of undisguised killing intent appeared on her flawless and beautiful face. No woman would tolerate others calling her ugly, especially a proud genius like her. Even if it was in her sect, she was taken to be the most outstanding, like an immortal that had descended to the mortal world, and she was held in reverence and admiration by countless people of the same generation. Even the seniors of the sect regarded it as a precious treasure. But now, she was called an ugly woman to her face. It wasn't that the woman in a green dress wasn't patient enough, but as far as she was concerned, this was the most direct and most reckless provocation. "Looks like you aren't just ugly and have a bad temper, your hearing isn't good as well. If I were you, I would have slit my throat and committed suicide a long time ago so as to avoid being humiliated and ridiculed by others." Lin Sun spoke indifferently. Boom! A myriad of green thunderbolts suddenly appeared in the void, and they interweaved together to form a strange and peerless painting that unfolded in the void. In the painting, the thunderbolts were like the sea and the sky. This was the woman in a green dress's answer. Her pretty face was icy cold with rage, and her beautiful eyes were filled with killing intent. She wanted to strike this vicious little thief Lin Sun to death. "Rise." Although Lin Sun's words were reckless, he didn't hesitate to rush up without hesitation. A big abyss appeared around him, and sword chi roared like a tide. In an instant, a great battle broke out in the field. Thunder and lightning raged and sword chi crisscrossed. The battle made the sky dim and the earth dim. Lin Sun's chi was like a boiling furnace, and his whole body was bright and blazing. Every strand of his hair flowed with brilliant Taoist light, and every strike he made showed a kind of extreme perfection. His power was so strong that it shook the world. But the woman in a green dress was also shockingly powerful. Her clothes fluttered, and her immortal body was ethereal. Every move she made contained the mystery of the Great Way. Bolts of azure lightning that were like enormous dragons were casually summoned by her, and they surged through the surroundings while an aura of destruction covered the heavens and the earth. A man and a woman were actually staging a great battle that could shock the world at this moment. If it were any other peerless saint, not to mention intervening, just being affected by the power of the battle would cause them to be seriously injured even if they didn't die. Kuan Xiaoyu and the others retreated far away at the first moment. When they witnessed such a battle, they couldn't calm down and their hearts were in turmoil. Originally, they thought that they were already the outstanding talents of a region, the peak of the 10,000 saints, and that they could run amok in this realm like a peerless giant. But Lin Sun's appearance had subverted their understanding and dealt them a heavy blow. Only now did they realize that there was a kind of monster in this world that couldn't be measured by common sense. And now, when they saw this peerless woman who obviously didn't belong to the 9 regions, and who clearly had combat power that was not weaker than Lin Sun, it was a big blow to Kuan Xiaoyu and the others. This woman should be a peerless figure from the Starry Sky Ancient Path. Only a force from the Starry Sky Ancient Path would have such a heaven-defying method to descend into the battlefield of flying immortals. Zhu Yingkong's purple eyes were flowing with divine light, and his expression was solemn. For the cultivators of the 8 regions, the Starry Sky Ancient Path was a world that stood above the heavens, and it was enough for anyone to look up to it. At least in the entire 9 regions, those who could freely enter the Starry Sky Ancient Path were great emperors. For example, in the Qi imperial clan where Zhu Yingkong came from, there was detailed information about entering the Starry Sky Ancient Path. It was clearly stated that the Starry Sky Ancient Path stood above the 9 regions, and it was a vast place where great emperors could run amok. The supreme experts there were so powerful that they could illuminate the entire starry sky. Xueqingyi and Kuan Xiaoyu couldn't calm down either. The forces behind them also knew many secrets about the Starry Sky Ancient Path. My clan's ancestor once said that if I can comprehend and create my own Dharma this time, he will open the forbidden path and send me to the Starry Sky Ancient Path to cultivate. Originally, I didn't care much about it, but now it seems that that place is indeed terrifying. Kuan Xiaoyu murmured softly. The peerless beauty of the green-dressed girl dazzled him and made his mind sway. What I can be sure of is that this woman has already embarked on the invincible path of this realm. She has fused her own path into one and created her own Dharma. I just don't know how many people like her are on the Starry Sky Ancient Path, Speaking of this, Kuan Xiaoyu couldn't help but sigh. The pursuit of the Great Way had always been that there was always someone better out there. It might seem like one could look down on the masses if one was confined to a single region, but when compared with people of a higher level, one would seem very weak. Say, Lin Sun came from a barren and dilapidated place like the ancient Desolation domain, which is far inferior to our domain. But why does he have such heaven-defying combat power? Xue Qingyi was very depressed. Looking at Lin Sun, who was evenly matched with the green-dressed girl, he couldn't help but feel a strong sense of jealousy, hatred, and disgust. Kuan Xiaoyu and Zhu Yingkong were both silent. They couldn't answer because even they couldn't understand it. It was so unbelievable that they still couldn't accept such a fact. Boom! In the sky, in the midst of the intense battle, the green-dressed girl suddenly snorted and said, "So, you haven't truly created your own Dharma. So what? It's more than enough to suppress an ugly woman like you." Lin Sun sneered. At this point in the battle, he was also very surprised. He realized that this girl actually cultivated 3 different paths and combined them into one. Her attainments in the absolute true saint realm could be said to be shocking. Moreover, this girl had even created her own Dharma. However, what made Lin Sun feel slightly at ease was that this girl's combat power was indeed terrifying, but her foundation was obviously not as good as his. The Dharma she created was also obviously not mature enough. Although it was powerful, it couldn't really threaten him. "Thief, you deserve to die." The green-dressed girl gritted her teeth. She was infuriated by Lin Sun calling her an ugly woman. Boom! She suddenly took out a dazzling jade plate that was round and translucent like the sun. It reflected a magnificent and vast world of thunder. Thunder Wheel of the Great Sun. As soon as this treasure appeared, the aura it emitted covered the surrounding mountains and rivers with a layer of terrifying destructive aura. Even the sky shook violently. The extremely oppressive and dangerous aura caused the expressions of Kuan Xiaoyu and the others to change. Looking at it from afar, they felt suffocated. There was no doubt that this was an incredible and terrifying treasure. "Thief, do you really think I can't do anything to you?" The green-dressed girl was like a fairy in charge of lightning punishment. A thunder wheel rotated and reflected a world of thunder. The destructive aura pressed down on the 9 heavens and 10 earth. At this moment, Lin Sun also felt a fatal threat. His black eyes narrowed, and he quietly took out the Endless Way Tower. "Junior Sister Jiangheng, the passage is about to close. Come back quickly." But right at this moment, a clear voice resounded from the sky above, and then a dazzling vortex appeared. "It's not too late to leave after I kill this thief." The green-dressed girl called Jiangheng was not willing to leave. She waved her hand without hesitation. Swish! The thunder wheel of the great sun rotated and crushed the void into powder. It whistled towards Lin Sun at an incredible speed. At this moment, Kuan Xiaoyu and the others felt a piercing pain that made them unable to open their eyes. The thunder wheel of the great sun was too dazzling. As it rotated, endless lightning poured out, destroying the world. It was so terrifying that it made people despair. Chapter 16:14. Almost without any hesitation, Lin Sun exerted his strength to an unprecedented level. Suppress! With a loud roar, he waved the Great Way bottomless tower and smashed it down. At this moment, numerous characters of the Grand Tao appeared on the body of the pagoda that seemed as if it was made from divine gold. They were profound, boundless, obscure, and profound, and they revealed a supreme and dignified aura that suppressed the surroundings and pacified the surroundings. Rumble! In an instant, the Thunder Sun Wheel and the Great Way Bottomless Tower, both of which could be said to be mysterious and unfathomable, fought against each other, causing the heavens and the earth to shake like a turbulent scroll. Kuan Xiaoyu and the others dodged with all their might without any hesitation. Their faces were filled with shock. Such a confrontation was simply earth-shattering. The deafening roar continued. Visible to the naked eye, dense power of the rules of heaven and earth appeared on the surface of the mountains and rivers, suppressing the terrifying aftermath of the battle. This was the power of the heavenly cycle order of the fairy battle realm. It seemed to not allow such shocking power to appear wantonly. Jiang Heng, who was dressed in a green dress and had a peerless appearance, revealed a look of shock. Her proudest attack had actually been blocked. One should know that the Thunder Sun wheel was not simple. After she created her own cultivation method, she was recognized by an Emperor realm existence in the sect, who specially gave it to her. Once this treasure appeared, ordinary saint treasures would be crushed into powder in an instant. But now it was blocked by a pagoda. At the same time, Lin Sun suddenly raised his eyebrows and revealed a serious look. The Great Wei Bottomless Tower was the treasure passed down in Fangtsuan Mountain. Senior Xiankong Ghost King once said that this treasure was very involved and had an incredible secret. In the past years of killing, Lin Sun would not use it easily unless he encountered a critical moment. But once he used it, it would usually be successful. But now, it was only on par with the Thunder Sun wheel. This made Lin Sun realize that the origin of this treasure was probably extremely shocking. It's that tower. Why is it here? Suddenly, that clear voice resounded once more from within the vortex passageway in the sky. However, it carried a tone of disbelief. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when a slender and fair hand suddenly stretched out from within the vortex passageway, and it grabbed fiercely in space. At this instant, it was like a god had attacked. Every single finger of that hand was coiled with the dazzling aura of Saint Tao laws, and it blotted out the sky and covered the world. As soon as he grabbed down, it actually gave others a terrifying feeling, as if the hand of the heavens was pressing down on the world. Exactly what is the origin of this pagoda? It actually caused eldest senior brother to be unable to restrain himself from making a move against it? In the distance, Jiang Heng's clear eyes squinted while ripples arose in her heart. This eldest senior brother of hers was a peak figure in the Great Saint realm a long time ago, and he was even renowned on the Starry Sky Great Saint rankings. However, she never expected that her eldest senior brother, who had always been extremely conceited and had extremely high standards, would become so anxious at this moment. He even attacked without any regard for anything else. One must know that this was the fairy realm of battle. Any power that exceeded the peak of the saint realm would have to pay a huge price. Rumble. At this moment, Lin Sun felt that he was as small as an ant and had a feeling of drowning and powerless struggle. He couldn't help but be shocked. What a terrifying big hand this was! How powerful was the cultivation of its master? Buzz. The next moment, Lin Sun felt that the Great Way without end tower was grasped by a mighty force, and it even had a feeling of being out of control. Oh no! Lin Sun's face changed. At this moment, a black light suddenly appeared out of thin air, and then a big black pot smashed on the big hand with a bang. Shameless thing, how dare you rob my little brother's treasure? Go back! That streak of black light was actually a large black bird. As it cursed, it used its claws to hold a large black wok and smashed it against the large hand. Clang! 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 The sound was like a thunderclap, and the divine splashes were endless. The big black bird! Lin Sun was surprised. He didn't expect that this wretched and insidious bird would appear at such a critical moment. Most inconceivable of it all was that the cauldron was suffused with an obscure glow, and as it ceaselessly smashed down, it actually completely dispersed the strength of the enormous hand, causing even the enormous hand to disperse and vanish in midair. Even Jiang Heng was stunned, and her beautiful eyes widened. How could her eldest senior brother's attack be blocked by a bird with a big black pot? Furnace of good fortune. In the whirlpool passage, the clear voice sounded again, but it seemed more and more surprised. At this moment, the whirlpool passage suddenly shook violently, showing signs of collapse. It turned out that the emergence of the power of rules in this world produced a kind of suppression, which affected the whirlpool passage. "Oh no, junior sister Jiang Heng, run!" The clear voice resounded once more, and it seemed to be extremely hurried and slightly unexpected. Jiang Heng also realized that something was wrong, but she was still angry. She couldn't help glancing at Lin Sun coldly and said, "Little thief, I'll remember you." She rose into the air and swept towards the whirlpool passage. Boom! But at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly rushed over with the Tower of Endless Way in his hand. "It's impolite not to reciprocate. I'll be merciful and send you on your way, ugly woman." Jiang Heng never thought that Lin Sun would be so bold and rampant. When she came to her senses, she could only fight back passively. Bang! The divine light roared and the light surged. The next moment, Jiang Heng staggered as if she was struck by lightning. Her pretty face turned pale, and she almost coughed up blood. However, taking advantage of this opportunity, she rushed into the whirlpool passage and disappeared in a flash. Lin Sun couldn't help feeling a little regretful that he couldn't make her stay. It was impossible to learn more about the starry sky ancient path from her. "Little thief, don't let me see you again, or I'll crush your bones and scatter your ashes." Jiang Heng's angry scream came out of the whirlpool passage. She was a little flustered and exasperated, no longer as arrogant and cold as before. "Don't worry. I don't want to see an ugly woman like you again." Lin Sun sneered. The whirlpool passage disappeared in the void. It was unknown whether the woman named Jiang Heng heard it or not. Lin Sun turned around. When he looked again, Kuan Xiaoyu, Xueqingyi, and Zhu Inkong were long gone. Obviously, they fled as soon as they sensed that something was wrong. Master, Xueqingyi and the others fled to the east. Little Silver and Little Tian hurried over. "There's no need to chase after them." Lin Sun shook his head. He knew that even if he chased after them, there was not much hope. But the fight with the woman named Jiang Heng had given Lin Sun a big shock. It turns out that there are such powerful opponents on the starry sky ancient path. Lin Sun had already seen the glory of the leaders of the other 8 regions. From the initial fear, he no longer took them seriously. But Jiang Heng's appearance made Lin Sun realize that there were still people who were not weaker than him on the mysterious starry sky ancient path beyond the 9 regions. Xuanji Taoist sect. Jiang Heng, Lin Sun murmured. The reason why Kuan Xiaoyu and the other 2 could escape safely this time was entirely because of the woman's interference. Moreover, from the moment she appeared, she had a high and mighty attitude. She regarded him as a thief. How could Lin Sun not be annoyed? So what if she's beautiful? When I, Lin, deal with my enemies, I'm not the kind of person who shows tender and protective feelings to the fairer sex. And that Jiang Heng's senior brother actually wanted to take the Endless Way Tower by force. I must also remember this. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and a cold light flashed in his black eyes. Boy, how is it? I came in time, didn't I? With a pair of wings on its back, the big black bird approached at a leisurely pace. Its nose was pointed at the sky, and it had a proud and complacent posture. However, it was carrying a black pot on its back, which made it look wretched. So, the last flying fairy token in the ancient desolation realm is in your hands. But why haven't you appeared before? Lin Sun glanced at the thieving bird. This guy had always been very mysterious and hid a lot of secret. The big black bird sighed and said, "Alas, the past is unbearable. As soon as I entered the 9 regions battlefield, I was moved to a secret realm in the middle of nowhere. I could only cultivate hard every day. It was also when the flying fairy battlefield descended that I used the flying fairy token in my hand to escape from that small world and was moved here." At the end, the big black bird glared and said, "Boy, you haven't thanked me yet. If it wasn't for me this time, how could you keep your treasure?" Little Silver, who was on the side, couldn't stand the big black bird's smugness. He snorted coldly and said, "You didn't show up earlier or later. I think you and that ugly woman both have ulterior motives. Maybe you have some ulterior motives for helping my master this time." The big black bird suddenly jumped and shouted, "Hey, little Silver, you've become angry after becoming a saint. How dare you provoke me? Believe it or not, I'll throw you into the pot and cook you." Little Silver rolled his eyes and said, "Try me if you dare." "You think I don't dare? I even dared to offend the great saint of the starry sky ancient path. Why would I be afraid of a little bug like you? Cut the crap. Do it if you dare." The two of them stared at each other with anger, neither willing to yield to the other. Lin Sun was amused and hurriedly stopped him. "Go, go, go. Let's go back and clean up the spoils of war." He waved his hand and turned back to the battlefield. "Okay." The big blackbird's eyes suddenly lit up. He followed behind Lin Sun eagerly. "Shameless." Little Silver spat and followed along with Little Tian. Soon, they returned to the battlefield. As far as the eye could see, there was a tragic scene of smoke everywhere. In the battle that had happened not long ago, Lin Sun had killed the most outstanding figures of the 8 regions in the Thousand Ghost formation. He had killed the 3 leaders, Qi Wushu, Hua Hongxiao, and Lai Qian. At the same time, Shi Pohei had also died tragically under the joint attack of Little Silver and Little Tian. In the end, only Kuan Xiaoyu, Xueqingyi, and Zhu Inkong had escaped in panic. It could be said to be a great victory. It could be foreseen that after the flying fairy battlefield ended, the 8 regions would be shaken and suffer a heavy blow. Chapter 16:15. Master, the spoils are too rich. There are more than 130 holy treasures of various colors, and most of them are top-notch treasures. There is no lack of powerful treasures. In addition, there are countless pills, rare treasures, divine materials. Oh, there are also many secret manuals. After cleaning up the battlefield, Little Silver was so excited that his eyes shone, and he seemed very excited. Little Tian flapped his wings and echoed, "The spoils this time are indeed amazing. I suspect that even a Saint King-level figure would covet them. Oh, this holy treasure is not bad. Let me take a look at it." The big black bird stepped forward and stared at a silver shuttle that was flowing with colorful lights. He spoke like an expert, but his pair of claws were very dishonest and directly grabbed it. Little Silver was quick to put it away and said with a vigilant expression, "Take a look? I think you're going to rob me." The big black bird said angrily, "Look at your stingy look. What kind of treasure haven't I seen before? Why would I be greedy for these things?" Little Silver said, "Since you don't like it, then be honest." The big black bird was so angry that he picked up the big black pot, wanting to teach Little Silver a lesson, but then his hair stood on end as he saw the crack demon butterfly staring at him faintly. The big black bird coughed dryly and said, "Hey, we're all on the same side. Why are you so polite? I promise that I won't touch a single treasure, okay?" Little Silver and Little Tian looked at each other before agreeing. "You should have done this long ago." The big black bird was so excited that it rubbed its claws together like a fly rubbing its legs. It looked very wretched. Its eyes shone as it jumped around in front of the holy treasures that were piled up like a mountain, almost drooling. Little Silver suspected that if it wasn't for him and Little Tian watching, this thieving bird would have swallowed all these treasures. Lin Sun, who was watching this scene from afar, couldn't help but smile. The harvest this time was indeed great, but it was also very understandable. It should be known that those who could enter the flying immortal battlefield this time were all top figures of their respective realms. Leaders like Qi Wushu and Hua Hongxiao even had great background. How could the treasures carried by such a person be compared to ordinary items? However, when Lin Sun saw the dazzling trophies one by one, he couldn't help but gasp and feel dazzled. As the saying goes, a man can't be rich without a windfall, and a horse can't be fat without feeding at night. After this great battle, although the cost was great, the rewards were equally astonishing. "Keep them first, we'll divide them up later," Lin Sun warned. Little Silver and Little Tian nodded simultaneously. Little Silver smacked his lips and said regretfully, Unfortunately, it's all that ugly woman's fault for letting Kuan Xiaoyu and the others escape. Otherwise, our gains would definitely be even greater. Lin Sun was counting the flying immortal tokens. After this battle, there were dozens of flying fairy tokens in Lin Sun's hands. Most of them were blank, and the battle merits and fate in them had been taken away. Only 8 of them were filled with merit and fate of the Tao. Even the color and aura of the flying immortal badge had changed, revealing a perfect clear color. One could faintly see that the surface of these 8 flying immortal tokens was enshrouded in mist, and it faintly seemed like the figures of flying immortals were flashing within. It was extremely mysterious. Little Silver and Little Tian each have one, Jing Xian one, Miss Ah Hu one, Old Toad, Alu Lin Sun calculated silently. Of course, he didn't forget to leave one for himself and Xia Ji as well. As for the big black bird, there was no need to consider it at all. That fellow was cunning and had come with the flying immortal token, so how could he not accumulate enough merit and fate of the Tao? Master, there are 5 days left before the flying immortal battlefield ends. Should we pursue Kuan Xiaoyu and the others next? Little Silver rubbed his palms together as he asked. 5 days. I wonder how the Tao Protector City is doing. Lin Sun's eyes drifted. Presently, the competition in the flying immortal battlefield was already without suspense, and the only thing that worried Lin Sun was the safety of the ancient desolation region. After that, Lin Sun restrained his thoughts and pondered deeply. Pursuing Kuan Xiaoyu and the others now is no different from looking for a needle in a haystack. However, we can't miss this opportunity and do nothing. Right. The big black bird came over and said mysteriously, "The flying immortal battlefield is a good place. All of you have witnessed it before. Some experts on the ancient path of the stars were able to break through the order barrier and arrive at this world. However, all of you probably don't know that the flying immortal battlefield is a natural treasure vault in their eyes." Little Silver said with surprise, "Treasure vault? There are so many flying immortal ghosts here. What treasures can there be?" "Stupid! Didn't you see that Nightski jade vine? Only those in the flying celestial realm can produce such a top-notch heavenly treasure." The big black bird lowered its voice, "Just like this mist mountain. It's very extraordinary. So long as we search carefully, we'll definitely be able to find some treasures that aren't inferior to the Nightski jade vine." Little Silver's eyes lit up. "Really?" The big black bird said angrily, "When have I ever lied to you?" Lin Sun, who'd been watching from the side, suddenly said, "Big Black, do you know something?" The big black bird's expression froze for a moment before it said proudly, "I know astronomy and geography. There's nothing I don't know about the secrets of the heavens since ancient times." This fellow was talking nonsense again, avoiding the important and dwelling on the trivial. However, Lin Sun knew very well that this fellow was indeed hiding a lot of secrets. He asked with a smile, "Then what do you think we should do next?" The big black bird said without hesitation, "Simple treasure hunting." Lin Sun nodded in agreement. "Throw away these flying immortal tokens." The big black bird glanced at the flying immortal tokens in Lin Sun's hand and suddenly said, "In this flying immortal battlefield, at most 9 flying immortal tokens can gather enough battle merits and fate. When the flying immortal battlefield ends, you won't be able to take away those blank flying immortal tokens." Lin Sun was surprised and glanced at the big black bird. How much did this fellow know about the flying immortal battlefield? The big black bird felt weak in its heart, but it said, "Similar things happened in the previous 2 9 regions competitions. Is it worth making such a fuss about it?" Lin Sun didn't ask further. Even if he asked further, according to the nature of this thief bird, it was destined not to reveal much. "Let's go, let's start," the big black bird said excitedly. 5 days is enough for us to sweep this Duanwu mountain. Why are you in such a hurry? Wait until I refine the night sky jade vine," Lin Sun said grumpily. He had just experienced a great battle, and his physical strength was also quite exhausted. Even if he wanted to act, he had to wait for his strength to recover first. At the same time, Lin Sun also wanted to try how magical the power of the night sky jade vine was. Damn it! In an underground cave, dark and damp, Kuan Xiaoyu's face was ferocious and his breath was violent. He could no longer suppress the anger in his heart and roared. One person almost wiped out all of us. At this point, the most elite forces in the 8 regions camp have almost been wiped out. What do we have to fight with the ancient wasteland region in the competition of the 9 regions? If the news spreads back to the 8 regions, how will those people look at us? At the end of his roar, Kuan Xiaoyu's eyes were red. This fiasco was not as simple as heavy casualties, but also made his state of mind suffer an unprecedented blow. Beside him, Xue Qingyi and Zhu Yingkong were silent, and their faces were uglier than the other. How could they not hate? The Flying Fairy battlefield was originally the most dazzling competition, which determined the situation of the 9 regions camp. After this competition, the real number 1 true saint of the 9 regions camp would be able to compete for the title. This was a rare supreme glory, enough to be recorded in history and remembered by the cultivators of the 9 regions. But now they had lost. They had exhausted all their means and schemes, and exhausted the top forces of the 8 regions camp, but in the end they still lost. They lost in the hands of one person. No, we haven't completely lost yet. Suddenly, Xue Qingyi took a deep breath, and a cold light flashed in his scarlet eyes. Don't forget, our action this time is two-pronged. There is also a battle going on outside the Flying Fairy battlefield. Kuan Xiaoyu and Zhu Yingkong were stunned, and then dazzling light erupted from their eyes. So long as our allied forces crush the ancient Desolation regions camp, then our 8 regions camp is bound to be invincible in the competition between the 9 regions camp. Xue Qingyi grew more and more excited as he spoke. At that time, no matter how heaven-defying Lin Sun's combat strength is, he would be unable to turn the situation around. Kuan Xiaoyu muttered, "Now we can only place our hopes on this. Don't worry. The allied forces of the 8 regions camp have a very good chance of winning this time." Suddenly, Zhu Yingkong's gaze was deep as he spoke in a low voice. "It has already come to this, so I won't keep it from the both of you. My ancient Shadow region has placed many pawns in the ancient Desolation region since a very long time ago. When the attack enters the critical moment, these pawns will definitely join forces and annihilate the ancient Desolation region's camp." Just these words alone caused Kuan Xiaoyu and Xue Qingyi's spirits to be refreshed. Both of them had never imagined that the ancient Shadow region would actually have such a plan. Ancient Desolation Domain, Dao Protector City. Smoke suffused the surroundings while the heavens and the earth dimmed down. The allied forces of the 8 regions camp were like tidewater, and they completely surrounded the Dao Protector City. Magic treasures whistled through the air while Dao arts poured down like countless dazzling rays of light, and they ceaselessly charged against the energy of the grand formation that enveloped the Dao Protector City. Such a situation had already continued for an entire 5 days. Xiaohao, Ruowu, Zhao Jingxian, the Old Toad, Alu, and the other peak saints had solemn expressions while their hearts were heavy. Every single one of them couldn't conceal the exhaustion between their brows. After 5 days and 5 nights of ceaseless defense, even if it was merely controlling the grand formation, it still caused them to feel exhausted, and they were on the verge of being unable to endure it. No one had imagined that the enemy this time would be so cunning. They didn't approach at all and took turns to launch attacks from afar, causing the slaughter formation of the 4 extremes to be unable to display its might at all. Within the city, countless cultivators of the ancient Desolation region were unable to eat or sleep in peace. They were depressed and nervous, and they lived in fear every single day. "Brother Xiaohao, bad news." Suddenly, laughing at the heavens figure appeared on the tower. His expression was livid as he gritted his teeth and said, "A traitor has appeared in our camp, and he destroyed a portion of the foundation of the 8 command formation just moments ago." Just these words alone were like a rock shattering, and it caused the expressions of everyone to change. Chapter 16:16. On top of the city wall, the atmosphere was extremely stifling. The expressions of Xiaohao, Ruowu, Zhao Jingxian and the others were extremely gloomy. There were 13 spies in total. 7 of them were from 3 ancient orthodoxies in the ancient Desolation realm, namely the Heavenly Sword sect, the Holy Land of Spirit Treasure, and the Saber Pavilion. The remaining 6 were from the Black Sea Tengu clan and the Saintly Ancient clan. Among the 13 people, the 2 sages had the highest cultivation levels. The others were all longevity tribulation eminences. When they were captured by laughing at the heavens, these spies almost immediately died without leaving behind any clues that could be used for investigation. Before they died, all their internal organs exploded. Their blood turned into a weird grayish-green color. Even their souls were blown into smithereens. Laughing at the heavens' voice was low as he gritted his teeth. I checked their belongings, but I didn't find any valuable clues. It can be concluded that they were secretly controlled by the foreign enemies long before they came to the 9 regions battlefield and were manipulated as chess pieces. Everyone's expression was gloomy. This time, the allied army of the 8 territories had invaded with all their might, and they'd encircled the city of Tao protectors for 5 days now. The reason they'd been able to persist until now during these 5 days was entirely because of the formidable might of the 4 absolutes and 8 territories formation, and it resisted all attacks. But now, a group of traitors had appeared in the city and caused damage to the array. Xiao Hao took a deep breath. He frowned and said, "Originally, according to my calculations, with the power of this formation, we would be able to last until the 8th or 9th day. But now," he didn't finish his words, but everyone knew what he meant. "Things have already happened. The most important thing now is to think about how to deal with the next situation." Ruowu clenched her teeth, her expression resolute. "Everyone, I suggest that from now on, we split up a portion of our forces to strictly guard the foundations of the great formations set up everywhere in the city. In addition, we need someone to investigate the experts in the city one by one to see if there are any hidden spies." "Let's do that." Zhao Jingxian was the first to agree. The others were clearly aware that the situation was dangerous to the point it was a matter of life and death, so they didn't hesitate in the slightest to take action. That night, everyone gathered together once more, but their expressions were even more heavy, and the space between their brows was covered in a gloominess that couldn't be eliminated. After deducing, the power of the 4 ultimate 8 defenses formation could only last until noon tomorrow at most. Who would have thought that in this battle of the 9 regions, just as we were about to turn the tables and wipe away the shame of our predecessors, in the end we're still going to lose? Yi Chen's expression was gloomy, and he was so angry that his eyes were red. "The most hateful thing is that I was defeated by my own people." The others were also filled with resentment. As Yechen said, Lin Sun had already reversed the situation of the ancient Desolation territory in the Battle of the 9 Regions and had the foundation to win the final victory. This should have been an unprecedented feat in the history of the ancient Desolation realm. It should have been enough to be recorded in the annals of history. But now, this glimmer of hope that they had fought for with great difficulty was about to be shattered. Who wouldn't hate him? Who wouldn't be angry? Back then, even though countless predecessors had sacrificed their lives and shed their blood, they could only be buried here in the end, and the realm of ancient Desolation had suffered 2 consecutive defeats in the Battle of the 9 Realms. Over the years, because of these 2 defeats, the cultivation circle of the ancient Desolation territory had fallen to the bottom and almost completely lost the qualification to fight against the other 8 regions. The ranking of the ancient Desolation territory had always been at the bottom of the 9 regions, and was regarded as a 2-legged sheep by the foreign enemies. They could be humiliated, trampled, and slaughtered at will. There was no difference between them and livestock, and if they were defeated again in this Battle of the 9 Regions, the vast ancient desolation territory was doomed to be completely destroyed. In the future, it was doomed to be unable to raise its head again, because this unprecedented great era would only occur once, and the apex domain would only descend once as well. After the extreme brilliance, if the situation couldn't be reversed, it was doomed to wither and be destroyed. Tomorrow at noon, someone sighed. Tomorrow was the 6th day of the Battle of Fairies, which meant that Lin Sun couldn't come back to save them at all. Isolated and helpless, ambushed on all sides. Is there only one word left for our camp in the ancient desolation territory? Death? Someone looked gloomy and lost his soul. It wasn't easy for Lin Sun to rebuild this city. The camp of the ancient desolation territory is also united because of him. Today we have the foundation to fight against the other 8 regions. If he returns and sees this city in ruins and has been trampled to the ground, I'm afraid he'll be very disappointed in his heart, someone said bleakly. Guys, the situation is not that serious yet. Suddenly, Xiaohao's voice was like thunder, shaking everyone's ears. His eyes were burning with determination. No matter how serious the situation is, even if the formation is broken tomorrow, I, Xiaohao, will do my best to fight against the enemy. Everyone was shocked. If it really comes to that, I will definitely not take a step back. Ruowu said softly and looked calm, as if she had seen through everything. Then let's fight. Zhao Jingxian gritted his teeth. This city was where Lin Sun's heart and soul were. He still wanted to see this city stand in the battle of the 9 regions and be immortal in the long river of time. How could he give it up? Everyone felt their blood boiling, and they all agreed resolutely. If the city existed, they would live. If the city died, they would die. The night seemed to be so long. Under the curtain of night, the attacks from all directions of the city of Dao protectors were like tidewater, and they emitted dazzling light as they rumbled towards the city. Numerous magic treasures were whistling, and countless Daoist techniques were pouring down. It was blazing and gorgeous, and it was chilling. In the city, the faces of countless cultivators were ashen, their minds in disorder, and they were restless. They had all received the news that the city of Dao protectors would not be able to defend it, and it made them feel sad. On the city wall, Xiaohao and the other top sages were silent and gazed into the distance. Ah Lu, if the city is breached tomorrow, promise me one thing. Old Toad suddenly sent a voice transmission, and its expression was unprecedentedly serious and solemn. It was no longer as cheeky and smug as before. What? Do you want me to abandon the city and run away? I won't promise you that. Alu also sent a voice transmission with a resolute expression. In the past, Old Toad would have sprayed Alu with spittle when it heard such stubborn words. But this time, Old Toad just shook its head. His voice was calm, as if he was talking about something that couldn't be more trivial. Promise me that no matter what, you'll fight your way out tomorrow and let Miss Jing Xian leave alive. Alu's body stiffened, and only now did he understand what Old Toad was thinking. Big Brother has done a lot for us. To put it bluntly, even if the city is breached and everyone dies, no one can blame it on Big Brother, Old Toad said seriously. But I know that if Miss Jing Xian dies, Big Brother definitely won't be able to bear such a blow. We've been brothers for so many years, and it's time for us to do something for Big Brother. What do you think? Alu was silent, and the rims of his eyes turned red. After a long time, he took a deep breath and said, After knowing you for so long, this is the first time I've realized that your suggestion suits me the best. Old Toad rolled its eyes and couldn't help but laugh. Alu grinned as well. How can you still laugh? Next to them, Zhao Jingxian felt that something wasn't right and couldn't help glaring at them. Old Toad said proudly, This is what it means to remain unfazed even if a divine mountain collapses in front of you. If you don't laugh to your heart's content now, are you going to cry instead? Alu nodded fiercely. Old Toad is right. Everyone couldn't help but smile. The night quickly faded, and dawn broke. The 6th day of the siege had arrived. Since early in the morning, the 8 territories' coalition army's offensive had suddenly become unprecedentedly violent. They no longer attacked the city in turns like before. Instead, the entire army had been mobilized. Obviously, the 8 territories' coalition army had realized that the city of Tao Protector's grand formation was on the verge of collapse, so they had launched an all-out attack. Kill. Today, we'll trample this city and slaughter those 2-legged sheep. Ha ha ha, it's time to end this battle. When the city is breached, I'll capture all those women and ravage them one by one to vent my anger. Brothers, kill them all. Outside the city, the sounds of battle shook the heavens, and all sorts of voices resounded like thunderclaps throughout the sky above the city of Tao Protector. For a time, the expressions of all the cultivators in the city changed. They were terrified, resentful, and terrified to the point their faces turned ghastly pale and filled with despair. The expressions of Xiaohao, Ruowu, Zhao Jingxian, and Old Toad grew colder and more resolute. Seething killing intent burned in the depths of every single one of their eyes. However, none of them had expected that the grand formation that was capable of persisting until noon would suddenly tremble violently under this full-force siege, and it seemed to be on the verge of shattering. Shit. Someone's expression changed. What's there to panic about? It's only a matter of time before the grand formation is destroyed. We just have to kill our enemies with all our might later. Xiaohao spoke in a low voice. The sounds of war drums, horns, and battle cries outside the city grew even more intense. Surging black baleful energy covered the entire city like dark clouds, and even the sky dimmed in comparison. The excitement, ferocity on the faces of the 8 territories' coalition army could still be clearly seen from afar. Clang. Xiaohao withdrew an ancient sword, and his gaze was icy cold and firm as he said, "Everyone, I Xiaohao will be the first to attack when the formation is destroyed." His voice was resolute and resounding. "We're willing to live and die with brother Xiaohao. As long as the city stands, so do we." The others didn't hesitate to withdraw their treasures and stand towering above the city. Their entire bodies emanated terrifying and piercingly cold killing intent, and they seemed like gods who were unafraid of death. Bang! No miracle occurred in the end, and the energy of the grand formation that covered the city was the first to show signs of being damaged. It was like a complete barrier of light had a hole pierced through it. At this moment, the earth-shattering sounds of battle outside the city, the incomparably dense killing intent, and the almost berserk attacks all whistled over. It was like a torrent that caused the heavens and the earth to dim down. Chapter 16-17. Clang. Right when a crack appeared on the formation, a sword hum resounded. Xiaohao flew up from the top of the city wall and emanated a monstrous aura while his long hair fluttered in the wind. Rise! With a loud shout, the divine sword suddenly spun and drew a circle in the sky. A perfectly round sword screen appeared in the sky, and it was suffused with purple light and intertwined with the Dharma laws. Rumble! All the attacks were blocked by the purple sword screen, and no matter how hard they attacked, they couldn't shake it. Slash! Xiaohao shouted loudly as a violet-colored strand of sword qi soared through the sky. It swept out for 10 kilometers, and it carried the might of an iron chain that traversed a river as it smashed down. In the distance, a group of enemies from the other territories charged over explosively with excited expressions, yet their bodies hadn't even approached when their bodies exploded into pieces, and they were forcefully plowed open a long path of blood by the dazzling and blazing violet-colored sword qi. One strike killed 100 enemies. Zhao Jingxian, Ruowu, and the others couldn't help but be amazed when they saw this. There was no doubt that besides Lin Sun, Xiaohao's combat strength was the strongest in the realm of ancient Desolation's camp. However, there were too many enemies outside the city, and they were like a flood that covered the sky and the earth. Losing 100 people was like throwing a stone in the water, and it couldn't cause any waves. On the contrary, the enemies seemed to be fearless when they saw the formation was broken, and they charged forward wave after wave. Rumble! The sky trembled and the world became dim. Surging killing intent covered the sky and the earth. If a hole was broken in a window, the cold wind and rain outside would all surge into the hole. That was the current situation. There were many top saints among the enemies who had sharp eyes, and they mobilized the army on the battlefield and charged at the top of the city wall at the first moment. Kill! 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 Earth-shaking roars resounded like the roars of countless fiend gods. Countless experts whistled toward the top of the city wall like a dense rain of divine light. At this moment it wasn't just Xiaohao. Ruowu, Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, Alu, laughing at the heavens, Yechun, Mi Hengzhen, Yi Mof, and the other top saints also attacked. How terrifying would the power of dozens of peerless sages be? Before the attack from outside the city could reach them, it was shattered by everyone's joint attack. The experts who rushed over were killed by the group of peerless sages. For a time, outside the city wall, a rain of blood poured down like a waterfall while corpses exploded ceaselessly like dense firecrackers. It was a horrifying scene. However, the situation did not last for long. Figures with tremendous sacred auras charged out from the enemy's army. There were men and women, old and young, and their auras were all extremely tyrannical. It was a group of peerless sages. This city will definitely be defeated, yet all of you are still stubbornly resisting. This is no different from a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You're overestimating yourselves. Someone snorted coldly. If Lin Sun is here, we may be afraid of him, but you? It's not enough. Some people were disdainful. I just happen to lack a few servants by my side. I want those 2 girls. An old man in a luxurious robe glanced at Ruowu and Zhao Jingxian with a burning gaze. In the blink of an eye, dozens of peerless sages gathered in front of the city. They stood in the air and locked onto Xiaohao and the others. In the distance, the allied forces of the 8 regions, who had been attacking, also stopped and did not move again. Because in such a battle, even getting close to it was no different from courting death, let alone getting involved. Damn you, Alu, go and kill this old bastard! The old toad roared angrily. Boom! Alu, carrying a huge iron rod, rushed out of the city wall and broke through the air. Like an ancient barbarian god, he exuded a wild and violent aura and rushed toward the old man in a luxurious robe, who spoke rudely to Zhao Jingxian. Clang! The old man in a luxurious robe raised his hand and released a flying sword, but it was smashed away by the iron rod in an instant, making a harsh collision sound. His face changed greatly and he gasped. He never thought that this barbarian would not only be bold enough to rush out of the city, but also be so powerful. When the old man in a luxurious robe wanted to dodge, it was too late. He could only face it head-on. Bang! With a sweep of the rod, the old man's body was smashed away like a broken sandbag. Countless bones in his body were broken in an instant, making crackling sounds. He only managed to stand a few 100 feet away, but he was already severely injured and kept coughing up blood. One rod, shocking the universe. The peerless sages of the 8 regions were shocked. Let's go together and kill. They attacked without hesitation. They took out their treasures and used Dharma spells to attack with all their might. Boom! Heaven and earth were in chaos and the light of the Tao roared. Attack! Kill! Xiaohao, Ruowu, Zhao Jingxian and the others also attacked. A chaotic battle between peerless sages had completely erupted. Such a scene wasn't something that others could participate in at all. It was too terrifying. In other areas, the allied forces of the 8 regions didn't stop there. They continued to attack the city protection array that was on the verge of collapse. In the city, the overlords of the ancient desolation region were extremely nervous and restless. They couldn't interfere or escape because the outside of the city had already been sealed. They could only place all their hopes on the peerless sages like Xiaohao and Ruowu. However, to their despair, The power of the formation around the city of Tao protectors was collapsing at a shocking speed as time passed. Boom! Not long after, the power of the formation completely collapsed on the city wall that was a few thousand feet away from the top of the city, and a gap appeared. Outside the city, countless ferocious and cruel cheers resounded. "A few of you go and block that place!" Xiao Hao shouted like a thunderclap. Immediately, a few peerless sages rushed over to defend the city. "Give up. The allied forces of the 8 regions are here, and there's nothing you can do. If you don't want to die an ugly death, then admit defeat now." A peerless sage from the outer regions said coldly, "I'll kill you first." Yi Chen soared into the sky and attacked with his sword. He was like a madman, and his sword energy shook the 9 heavens. Boom! But it didn't take long before the power of another formation collapsed and a gap appeared. "Ruo Wu, take a few people with you to defend the city," Xiao Hao shouted. Ruo Wu didn't hesitate to flash away with a few people. But everyone was clearly aware that such a scattered defense was bound to be like drinking poison to quench thirst. Along with the passage of time, the power of the formation would only disperse more and more. At that time, how could a few dozen peerless sages like them possibly defend the entire city? For a time, their hearts felt extremely heavy. Is the situation really impossible to turn around? Kill. How can we give up until the last moment? Laughing at the heavens roared with a resolute expression, and he seemed like a mad immortal of the blade as he rampaged through the battlefield. Along with the passage of time, more and more formations collapsed in different areas of the city of Tao protectors, and the gaps that appeared grew larger and larger. If the city of Tao protectors was a seamless heavenly robe before this, then holes had started to appear on it now. The situation had become extremely precarious. It wasn't exaggerated to say that so long as a single area was breached, then the city of Tao protectors would definitely fall. At that time, the cultivators within the city were bound to be unable to flee and would be slaughtered wantonly. Pooh! It wasn't long before Xiao Hao coughed up blood. Because he'd dispersed too much of his forces, only he, Alu, Old Toad, and Zhao Jingxian remained at the top of the city. On the other hand, their opponents were a few dozen peerless sages. Swish! At this moment, Xiao Hao utilized the Emperor Dao treasured scripture that was coiled with violet energy once more, and he was only barely able to resist their attacks. "I'll deal with these animals later and open a path for all of you. It can be considered as me, Xiao Hao, repaying Brother Lin's kindness." Xiao Hao spoke indifferently via voice transmission, and he seemed to be unafraid of death. "There's no need to speak any further. This city is bound to be destroyed. If all of you are able to survive, then you might have a chance to make a comeback in the future." Old Toad, Alu, and Zhao Jingshuan's hearts surged. None of them had expected that Xiao Hao would make such a decision, and it caused them to be unable to calm down. "That won't do. Even if we have to fight with our lives on the line, we have to do it together." Zhao Jingxian refused flatly. Old Toad and Alu were instantly anxious. How could they possibly watch as Zhao Jingxian fought with her life on the line? "Humph! You still intend to open a path? Impossible." Suddenly, an enemy grunted coldly. "An inescapable net has been set up in an area 1,500 kilometers around the city. All of you have a Saint Dao restriction formation to protect the city, but do you think we don't?" Others laughed with ridicule. "What?" The expressions of Xiao Hao, Zhao Jingxian, and the others changed while their hearts sank to rock bottom. They were sure that their enemies had attacked with all their might, and they'd clearly exhausted all methods and didn't intend to let a single one of them off. "Looks like I can only ask all of you to fight to the death with me." Xiao Hao sighed, and he seemed to feel slightly apologetic for being unable to help Zhao Jingxian and the others. "It's nothing more than death. But before we die, we have to drag a few down with us." Zhao Jingshuan's clear eyes were icy cold. "Motherfucker! Let's go all out." Old Toad's expression changed indeterminately, and then it suddenly gritted its teeth and howled. It disregarded everything and fought desperately. Fuck them! Alu's eyes almost split apart from rage, and his eyes had turned red. Rumble! The battle was still going on, but it was growing more and more horrifying and horrifying. The entire city of Tao protectors was in danger of being destroyed at any moment. I'm not afraid to tell all of you that there are a total of 9 Saint Tao restriction formations outside the city. Even if all of you kill your way out of the city, it'll be impossible for all of you to escape their encirclement and slaughter. Someone grinned as he spoke as if victory was within his grasp. Xiaohao coughed up blood incessantly while his countenance turned pale. However, his expression was resolute as before, and it hadn't wavered at all. Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, and Ah Lu had icy cold expressions on their faces, and they remained silent. However, none of them knew how long such a battle could continue or how long the city of Tao protectors could be preserved. How good would it be if Big Brother was here? Old Toad suddenly let out a long sigh. He didn't have extravagant hopes that Lin Sun would be able to return and save them, but he was truly unwilling to die in battle without even seeing Big Brother again. No matter who comes now, they're bound to be unable to break through the 9 Saint Tao restriction formations outside the city. I advise all of you to give up. Someone spoke in a ghastly voice. Rumble. However, just as he finished speaking, an earth-shattering sound suddenly rang out from a place extremely far away from the city. Chapter 16:18. Rumbling resounded while exclamations of shock resounded. Because it was extremely far away, it didn't seem conspicuous at first, and it was even to the extent that no one paid any attention to it. But it didn't take long for the rumbling to approach the city at a shocking speed, and exclamations of shock resounded incessantly all along the way. Shit! Someone's breaking through the formation. How terrifying! Is that even human? Help! Help! Shrill cries of terror resounded incessantly from afar, but it didn't take long for it to stop. Anyone with the slightest bit of experience would be able to determine that all those experts who'd screamed had been killed. It didn't take long for the allied army of the 8 territories to become restless and chaotic. This scene was noticed by the peerless saints of the 8 territories who were locked in fierce battle with Xiaohao and the others, and their expressions changed. Impossible! Even if Lin Sun survives the encirclement of the 9 Saint Tao restrictions, it's absolutely impossible for him to break through the formation in such a short period of time. What exactly is going on? For a time, the peerless saints of the 8 territories had no choice but to stop their attacks and split their attention to investigate the situation behind them. At the same time, Xiaohao, Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, Alu, and the others were stunned. At such an urgent and dangerous moment, reinforcements actually came to kill them? Could it be Big Brother? Old Toad's voice trembled with excitement, and he, Zhao Jingxian, and Alu swiftly swept their divine senses over as well. At the same time, Ruowu, against the heavens, Yechen, and the others who were scattered around the city of Tao protectors had noticed this unusual situation as well, and they shot their gazes over. Rumble! The rumbling sound was growing closer and closer, and it was like a raging storm was sweeping towards the city of Tao protectors in an unparalleled manner. The entire battlefield stopped at this moment. Countless experts of the 8 territories who were attacking the city of Tao protectors felt horrified, and they'd noticed that something was off. Exclamations of shock and shrill cries resounded through the sky. The first thing they noticed was a black veil that seemed like eternal night. It seemed like ink was spreading from the distant sky, and it blotted out the light in the sky while emanating a deep and oppressive aura that caused one's heart to palpitate with fear. Rumble! After that, an explosion that shook the heavens and the earth suddenly resounded in the area that was originally covered by the 9 Saint Tao formations in the distance. It was like a sledgehammer that smashed the Saint Tao restriction formation into pieces, and it forcefully tore open a path in space, causing a rain of light to spray towards the surroundings while the talismans of the Tao exploded into pieces. The formation is broken? The expressions of the sages of the 8 regions changed drastically. In just a few breaths of time, 9 layers of Saint Tao restriction arrays were broken? One had to know that the forbidden divine array was created by the allied army of the 8 territories. It was enough to trap and kill a sage, but now it was torn apart like a piece of paper. Who is it? On the other hand, Xiaohao, Zhao Jingxian, and the others became even more eager. Their hearts that had sunk to rock bottom suddenly rose up, and a smear of anticipation appeared on their faces. At the moment of life and death, there was a glimmer of hope coming from afar. Who wouldn't be excited? At this moment, the entire battlefield was in a state of chaos. All the forces of the allied army that were trapped in different areas of the city of Tao protectors were affected by this unusual situation, and their expressions changed indeterminately while their hearts were uneasy. What exactly happened? After that, a wisp of scarlet-red blood suddenly tore open an enormous hole in the army that was guarding the rear. That wisp of scarlet-red blood sprayed out from numerous corpses, and it was spreading at a shocking speed. Everywhere it passed, corpses piled up while blood sprayed into the surroundings. No one could stop it because it was too swift, and terrifying. Even true saints would instantly perish on the spot as soon as they approached it. A single person? How could this be possible? Suddenly, someone exclaimed with shock and disbelief. It was also at this moment that everyone's divine sense and gazes were finally able to see clearly. It was a figure. She was slender, delicate, and was suffused by a strand of darkness that seemed like eternal night as she walked over. Everywhere she passed was covered by the veil of night as she strode forward. Even the sky was devoid of light, and it was like day had fallen into night. All the enemies that obstructed her path had transformed into piles of corpses beneath her feet. Blood sprayed and converged like a waterfall. Bones piled up like mountains. It was like a world-shocking scene of purgatory. Her arrival had also brought death with her, leaving behind mountains of corpses and seas of blood. Anyone who witnessed such a scene would feel a chill run down their spine as if they had fallen into an icy pit, and they would be unable to believe their eyes. A straight and bloody path extended from the moment her figure appeared all the way behind her as she approached the city of the Tao protectors. The 9-layered saint path restriction formation was easily broken through like a decoration. So what if there was an army of tens of thousands? Anyone who obstructed her would be left lying dead on the ground. Who is she? How is this possible? A supreme saint of the 8 regions cried out in shock and fury, and he didn't dare believe his eyes. A single person was unstoppable, and she had forcefully crushed a bloody path through the army of the 8 regions. Who would dare believe this? Is it her? Zhao Jingshuan's eyes opened wide the moment she saw the slender figure bathed in the darkness. She felt a sense of déjà vu. It's not Big Brother. Alu cried out. It's no different from Big Brother's arrival, even if it's not him. The old toad grinned with excitement on his face, and he almost danced with joy. Even he hadn't expected that she would appear here at this moment. She was like a ray of light that tore through the dense fog and brought dawn. So powerful! Xiaohao was shocked. He could tell at a glance that the newcomer was extraordinarily powerful. At this moment, all the supreme saints of the ancient desolation realm widened their eyes as if they had seen a deity descending from the sky. Boom! Wherever her figure passed, she brought darkness and death with her. Wherever she passed, the sky and earth trembled, and the enemy's corpses piled up on the ground, turning into piles of blood. For the allied army of the 8 regions, such a mysterious woman was like the grim reaper from hell, and all she brought was death. Their formation was in complete chaos. Screams, and wails rang out incessantly. Even though they were extremely far away, countless experts of the 8 regions were trembling in fear, and their hearts turned cold. As a result, What was supposed to be an all-out attack on the city was completely disrupted at this moment. Kill! Finally, a supreme saint of the 8 regions couldn't hold back anymore. He teleported through the void and charged forward. Boom! It was a sage-like old man in a red robe. As soon as he attacked, he took out a silver ancient sword and slashed across the sky. The sword intent was shocking. Obviously, he knew that the newcomer was not friendly, so he didn't hold back at all. The slender figure didn't stop. She continued moving forward as if she didn't feel anything. From the beginning to the end, she was extremely calm and composed. It gave people the feeling that she didn't have any emotions. When the sword approached her, she merely raised her right arm, and from within her black sleeve, a jade white hand that was lustrous like the fat of sheep and was so perfect that it was practically flawless was revealed. Every finger was like the most outstanding work of the Creator, giving people a sense of extreme beauty. This slender hand merely squeezed the air lightly, and the murderous sword chi suddenly exploded, causing a rain of light to scatter in all directions. Then, she pressed a finger in the air. Boom! The sword-wielding elder didn't even have time to react before his body exploded in the void, as if it had been ruthlessly pressed by the hand of the heavens. He didn't even have the time to scream before he died. On the other hand, as far as everyone was concerned, killing such a peerless saint was actually as easy as swatting a fly, and it gave them a feeling of overturning their vision and shock. How terrifying! The supreme saints of the 8 regions were all shocked, and their minds were shaken. At this instant, the entire battlefield became strangely deathly silent, and the atmosphere became oppressive to the point it was practically suffocating. Countless gazes and countless divine senses fell on the figure bathed in the darkness of the eternal night. In the direction she was heading, all the enemies seemed to have opened up a path at the same time, as if they were avoiding ghosts and gods. It's her! At this moment, Zhao Jingxian was finally sure who the newcomer was. After not seeing her for so many years, the other party's temperament, aura, and even her figure had changed drastically. So much so that when she saw her for the first time, she almost thought that she had mistaken her for someone else. It looks like she's even more powerful than Big Brother now, Alu muttered to himself in a daze. It's not just now. Big Brother didn't seem to be more powerful than her in the past. The old toad sighed. After not seeing her for so many years, the girl who was so beautiful that even the heavens and earth dimmed had become more and more mysterious and terrifying. Friend, who are you? Why are you blocking our way? Suddenly, a supreme saint spoke. It was a man in a golden robe. His eyes were sharp. He didn't sense the aura of the ancient desolation region from the woman who was bathed in darkness. In other words, the other party didn't have an ancient desolation token. There was no response. She bathed in the darkness and continued to move forward. Her footsteps never stopped, and she didn't say a word. Silent, calm, and composed, she walked alone. Behind her was a bloody path, with mountains of corpses and seas of blood as the background. The man in the golden robe's face was gloomy. If it were any other time, he would have attacked her. But after witnessing the unimaginable bloody scene in front of him, he didn't dare to act rashly. Luckily, according to his observation, as long as they didn't block her way, she wouldn't take the initiative to attack. Everyone, stay away and let her pass. The man in the golden robe quickly told the others. The supreme saints surrounding the city also noticed that as long as they didn't block her way, the woman bathed in the darkness wouldn't even look at them, let alone attack them. She completely ignored them. Brother Xiaohao, get out of the way. All of a sudden, the old toad's expression changed as he realized something. He quickly grabbed Xiaohao's sleeve and dodged to the side. Xiaohao was bewildered, and he was slightly surprised and bewildered. Could it be that this mysterious woman didn't come to rescue us? It was also at this moment that the woman, who was bathed in the darkness of the eternal night, stopped on the city wall. The atmosphere was extremely silent. The huge city and the huge battlefield were as silent as a graveyard. Her figure became the focus of everyone's attention. His aura is here, but where is he? A clear, clean, and pleasant murmur arose, like the tinkling of nature, drifting over the smoke-filled city wall. It's the new year. Let summer solstice come out for some fresh air. Chapter 16:19. There was a hint of disappointment in her voice. She stood on top of the city wall, bathed in the darkness of the eternal night. Her slender figure seemed to be isolated from the world, attracting countless gazes. But she ignored them all, because the person she was looking for wasn't here. Just like what she had said years ago, my world is very small, so small that it can only accommodate you. But at this moment, the top sages of the 8 regions couldn't stay calm, and their expressions changed. Him? Who was he? But they were sure that this mysterious and terrifying woman was here to find someone, not to save the people of the realm of ancient desolation. As for Old Toad, Zhao Jingxian, and the others, they all sighed inwardly. So many years had passed, but she was still the same. She had never changed. She only cared about one person, and nothing in this world could attract her attention. Miss, who are you looking for? There's no one in the realm of ancient desolation that I don't know, Xiao Hao suddenly said in a gentle voice. Before, the situation was urgent and the city of Dao protectors was about to fall, and they were ready to fight to the death. But everything changed after the arrival of this mysterious woman. Even the 9-level Saint Dao restriction formation that surrounded an area of 1,500 kilometers outside the city was easily torn open by her. Even the vast allied army of the 8 regions couldn't stop her. She left a bloody path in the world, and mountains of corpses and seas of blood were piled up. Even a top sage was crushed to death by her finger. They didn't even have the strength to struggle. It was unbelievable. But at the same time, because of her arrival, the huge battlefield fell into a stalemate, and the atmosphere was eerily silent. Imperceptibly, it gave the people of the realm of ancient desolation a chance to breathe. Hearing Xiaohao's words, people like Ruowu, Against the Heaven, and Yi Chen couldn't help but be curious. Right, she came here in the eternal night alone. Who was she looking for? It was silent. She, who was bathed in the eternal night, didn't pay attention to anyone, as if she hadn't noticed anything. After standing in silence for a while, she raised her head slightly and looked at the sky, as if she was looking for something. In the end, she turned around and walked away from the city wall. It seemed that if she didn't find the person she was looking for, the people in this city and everything in this world didn't matter anymore. Xiaohao and the others tensed up. All the experts in the 8-territory alliance army were shocked. This unbelievably powerful woman was not here to help the ancient desolation realm. Move aside, make way for this lady. The golden-robed man with sharp eyes shouted and gave the order. Anyone could tell that with this woman here, she was simply an unrivaled existence. She was too terrifying and frightening. If he could make her disappear quickly, that would undoubtedly be the best outcome. Instantly, many experts from the realm of ancient desolation paled. Even Zhao Jingxian couldn't sit still and said, Xie Ji, I know you are here for Lin Sun, but he is not here now. Lin Sun. It was just 2 words, but it seemed to have a strange magical power. It made her, who was about to turn and leave, suddenly stop in her tracks. It was just a simple action, but it made all the experts of the 8 territories coalition army tense up, and their expressions changed dramatically. Did this woman come for Lin Sun? Who in the entire 9 regions battlefield didn't know Lin Sun's name? However, no one had expected that such a mysterious and terrifying woman would have something to do with Lin Sun, because in the past 2 years, no one knew the existence of this mysterious woman at all. She seemed to have appeared out of thin air. At this time, Xiaohao and the others finally realized that she was here for Lin Sun. For a moment they were all shocked. Before, they didn't know that there was such an incredibly powerful woman beside Lin Sun. I know. Xie Ji didn't look back. This time, she had already captured all the aura about Lin Sun. Unfortunately, it was only the aura. He wasn't here. Therefore, she planned to leave. But what you don't know is that this city was built by Lin Sun with all his effort. There are a lot of his friends in this city. If this city falls, do you think he will have a good time when he comes back? Zhao Jingxian took a deep breath and said seriously. Also, look at all the people outside the city. They are enemies of the 8 realms. Perhaps they don't matter to you, but in the past 2 years, they have tried to kill Lin Sun more than once. They even treat Lin Sun as their number 1 enemy. At the moment, only Xia Ji could save the current situation, so Zhao Jingxian could only do everything she could to keep her. She knew Xia Ji too well. This mysterious girl never cared about anything except Lin Sun. Xia Ji was silent, and the faces of the 8 regions coalition army changed, thinking that this was bad. Xia Ji, look. Suddenly, Old Toad stood up and pointed at Zhao Jingxian, saying, she is Big Brother's woman. If she dies, Big Brother will definitely be heartbroken and use this method to keep you here. You can call me despicable, but I admit it. But, speaking of this, Old Toad's eyes turned red, but Big Brother has risked his life for the past 2 years and put in so much effort to fight for a chance to win. If he loses like this, it will be a pity. His words made everyone clench their fists. Yes. If the city fell this time, the realm of ancient desolation would be finished. Zhao Jingxian sighed inwardly, but she also knew that Old Toad was doing this to keep Xia Ji. She didn't mind it, but she was worried. Sure enough, at that moment, Xia Ji turned around and looked at Zhao Jingxian. Her clear and calm eyes made Zhao Jingxian uncomfortable. After a while, Xia Ji withdrew her gaze, her voice still as calm as before. Without my permission, nothing counts. Everyone's eyes were a little strange. Zhao Jingxian wasn't annoyed. Instead, she felt that this was the Xia Ji she knew. Miss, if you want to leave, please leave now, the golden-robed man said in a low voice, feeling that something was wrong. At the same time, he sent a telepathic message to the other top sages, get ready. As long as this girl chooses to stay, attack with all your strength. At the same time, arrange for the others to attack the city with all their strength. The array has been broken. As long as the army rushes in, the outcome will be determined. The top sages of the 8 regions' eyes flashed and they agreed. Right at this moment, Xia Ji turned around, and a bone spear silently appeared in her fair right hand. Strands of starlight lingered on it. The expressions of the golden-robed man and the others changed drastically. On the huge battlefield, countless experts from the 8 regions also stiffened. Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao and the others were relieved and grateful. I just don't want to disappoint him. The girl's slender figure stood in the void, surrounded by the dark light of the eternal night. She held the white bone spear in her hand. Although she was alone, she had the aura of overlooking the heavens. As soon as she finished speaking, she took a step forward. Between heaven and earth, the sky was as bright as night. An invisible killing intent spread from her figure and spread in all directions. For a moment, a terrifying bloody phenomenon appeared in the void. Countless corpses piled up and blood spread. It was as if purgatory had been stepped under her feet. Attack! The golden-robed man's expression changed drastically, and he gave the order without hesitation. The dozens of top sages who had been waiting for a long time locked their auras on Xia Ji and attacked. Boom! The world was turned upside down, and the sun and moon lost their light. Dazzling sage treasures, surging dermic powers, and terrifying sage nomological powers intertwined and engulfed Xia Ji in an overwhelming manner. The expressions of Xiaohao, Old Toad, and the others changed drastically. But when they were about to attack, they saw an unbelievable scene. Xia Ji raised the white bone spear in her hand. It was an inconspicuous movement, but it attracted the dark power of the eternal night and gathered it. She took a step forward, accompanied by eternal night. All the attacks that came from all directions were like bubbles that couldn't withstand a single blow. Before they could even get close, they would explode and dissipate into the void. Clang! She suddenly stepped forward and flashed in the air. The white-boned spear produced a cold hum, like the murmur of the grim reaper. A top sage was directly pierced through, and his body disintegrated in the eternal night and turned into ashes. This! How terrifying! The golden-robed man and the others felt their scalps go numb, and their eyes almost popped out of their sockets. Earlier, Xia Zhi had come from afar alone. Everywhere she went, there was blood and death. From the beginning to the end, she did not use any weapons. Originally, this was already terrifying enough, making one feel like their guts were being torn apart. But now, when Xia Zhi attacked with the white-boned spear, the top sages realized that they had underestimated the power of this mysterious woman. Poof! Soon, another top sage was pierced through, and blood splattered in the sky. Xia Zhi walked in the air, like the ruler of the eternal night, and began a massacre. She did not waste any time, nor did she hesitate. She was so calm that it was frightening. The white-boned spear was surrounded by starlight. It flew in the eternal night, and there was nothing it could not destroy. Wherever it pointed, there would be top sages killed. In the blink of an eye, 5 top sages died tragically. All of them were killed with a single blow. As long as they were targeted, they could not dodge or resist. In the distance, the allied forces of the 8 territories felt their hearts go cold, as if they had fallen into an ice cave. On the city wall, Xiaohao, Zhao Jingxian, and the others also gasped. They could not believe their eyes. To them, Lin Sun's combat power was already heaven-defying and could not be measured by common sense. But compared to him, Xia Zhi was undoubtedly heaven-defying and even more terrifying. Her movements were simple and straightforward, but she was invincible. She killed top sages as if she was tearing them apart. It was an absolute suppression. From the beginning to the end, she had not met a single opponent. Someone, stop her. The golden-robed man's eyes were bloodshot. Xia Zhi's power frightened him, and he had to mobilize all the top sages on the battlefield to attack together. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. In all directions, the top sages of the other 8 territories, who were attacking the city in different areas, realized that something was wrong and came together. Chapter 1620. Pooh! 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 Blood rained down and corpses fell to the ground. Shrill screams and terrified roars of despair interweaved together and shook the heavens and earth. The heavens and earth seemed to have fallen into eternal darkness. Blood was like scarlet ink that spread through the veil of night along with Xia Zhi's slaughter. This time, the 8 territories alliance army had mobilized their full strength. There were hundreds of peak stage sages. Some of them guarded the rear and sealed off the entire city. Some of them acted as the vanguard and launched attacks. Some of them stayed within the army and held the fort. Apart from that, there were countless true sages leading experts from various territories to attack the city of Dao protectors from different directions. But at this moment, the place where Xia Zhi stood had become the eye of the storm. Many peak stage sages charged forward in an attempt to suppress Xia Zhi with their absolute advantage in numbers. But it was destined to be futile. She was alone, holding the white-boned spear. Her figure was bathed in the curtain of the eternal night. It was as if she had entered an uninhabited realm, and her momentum was unstoppable. Xiaohao, Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, Alu and the others wanted to help, but they realized that they couldn't participate in such a terrifying battle. It wasn't because there were too many enemies, but because Xia Zhi alone was like a natural chasm that stood before the city of Dao protectors. No one could surpass her. The most shocking thing was how terrifying those peak stage sages were. Each of them was like an overlord with monstrous might. However, in the eyes of Xia Zhi, they were like a group of moths that flew into a flame. So long as they approached her, they would be annihilated on the spot, and it was a straightforward and all-powerful attack. In just a short moment, over 30 peak stage sages had fallen. Their corpses and blood dyed the area before the city red. On the other hand, Xia Ji was unharmed from the beginning until the end. She was alone, but she was invincible. How is this possible? How can she be so strong? Is this the true strength of a peak stage true sage? Countless exclamations of anger, fear, and disbelief rang out. Every single peak stage sage had ashen and unsightly expressions. Everyone, spread out and attack the city with all your might. Someone roared. The city of Tao protectors occupied a huge area. Since they couldn't break through Xia Ji's line of defense, they could only spread out and focus on attacking the city. After all, no matter how strong he was still a single person. How could he possibly protect the entire city? As long as the city was conquered, the experts of the ancient desolation realm in the city were doomed to suffer a devastating blow. Rumble! In the next moment, the peerless sages that were charging towards him split up and headed towards different areas. The expressions of Xiaohao and the others couldn't help but change because of this. They realized that their enemies had disregarded everything and intended to destroy the city of Tao protectors with everything they had. Buzz, at this moment, Xia Ji suddenly stepped into the air. Her slender figure drew the light of eternal night between heaven and earth, and her aura also rose to the extreme. In the blink of an eye, one silhouette after another emerged from Xia Ji's body. Each of them was bathed in the dark energy of the eternal night. Their numbers numbered in the hundreds and thousands, and they charged to different parts of the city of Tao protectors. With the eternal night as the guide, one turned into 1,000. That shocking scene immediately shocked everyone present. The most unbelievable thing was that each of the doppelgangers were extremely powerful. Although they were not as heaven-defying as the original, they were not any weaker than a peerless saint. Many cultivators from the 8 regions were so shocked that their eyeballs almost popped out. What kind of Tao art is that? Some of the peerless sages exclaimed in shock. At a glance, there were hundreds and thousands of Xia Ji's silhouettes bathed in the eternal night as they moved between heaven and earth. It was a terrifying scene. Even Xiaohao, Zhao Jingxian, and the old toad were in a daze. How could a peerless true saint have such incredible power? Boom! There was no suspense. The battle continued. However, the plan of the peerless sages of the 8 regions to attack the city of Tao protectors with all their might was completely shattered at this moment. No matter where they appeared, they would be stopped by Xia Ji's doppelgangers. Thousands of Xia Ji represented thousands of peerless sages. The huge number made the peerless sages of the 8 regions, who only had a few hundred in total, suddenly seem insufficient. Although the strength of the doppelgangers was not as terrifying as the original, they still had the upper hand since they outnumbered the peerless sages of the 8 regions. Great! Excited shouts burst out from the city of Tao protectors. Even peerless sages like Xiaohao and Ruowu felt their blood boiling with excitement. One person had miraculously defended the city. Let's attack together. All right. Kill. Zhao Jingxian, the old toad, Alu, and the others cooperated with Xia Ji and launched a counterattack from different directions of the city of Tao protectors. Rumble, thunderous booms resounded between heaven and earth. Divine radiance swept out like a landslide and a tsunami. Those from the 8 regions who were not as strong as true Saint Jueshio did not dare to get close at all because they would be killed if they were affected. Xia Ji was still as calm as ever. She did not utter a single word from the beginning to the end, as if she had no emotions at all. Her original body held a white bone spear and walked around the battlefield. Anyone who was targeted by her would not be able to escape death. On the battlefield, blood splattered everywhere and the sounds of fighting shook the sky. The weather changed and the sky turned pale. It was no exaggeration to say that this was definitely the largest and most tragic war since the beginning of the 9-region battlefield. Even peerless sages could not escape the attack of death, let alone ordinary true saints. Whether it was in the ancient desolation domain or the other 8 regions, a war of this scale was enough to shock the world. This was the 9-region battlefield. It was a battlefield that could affect the situation of the 9 regions and change the fate of a region. Killing was the eternal theme here. Scenes of blood flowing like rivers were common. It was the same during the first battle of the 9 regions. It was the same during the second battle of the 9 regions. This time, it was no exception. However, unlike the previous 2 battles of the 9 regions, this time, the ancient desolation domain was rising through the hardships of blood and fire. They had the hope of winning the final victory. Originally, this strand of hope was very likely to be extinguished today. But with the arrival of Xia Ji, the situation of the entire battlefield changed. It was completely different from before. Rumble, the murderous aura was like a tide, the sound of Tao was like thunder, and the smell of blood filled the sky and the earth. It was as if the battle of ancient gods had reappeared in the world. Such a battle scene was enough to make a true saint feel hopeless. As time passed, the number of peerless sages in the 8 regions was decreasing at an alarming rate. Originally, the combat strength of peerless sages like Xiaohao, Zhao Jingxian, and Old Toad was already extraordinary. They had been suppressed before because the number of enemies was too large, and they had to protect the safety of the entire city. But now it was different. The appearance of Xia Ji broke the siege and gave them the opportunity to take the initiative to attack. Kill! At this moment, whether it was Xiaohao, Ruowu, Zhao Jingxian, Old Toad, or Ah Lu, they were all in high spirits and were no longer depressed. Kill! A roar that shook the sky came from everyone's chest, venting the hatred in their bones. The ancient desolation domain had been bullied and suppressed for too long. Who would be willing to be slaughtered like livestock? Who could forget the shame, hatred, blood, and tears that countless sages had suffered on this battlefield during the previous 2 battles of the 9 regions? Kill! They killed until their blood flowed for thousands of miles and their corpses were scattered all over the mountains. In just a few minutes, the fighting spirit of the 8 regions alliance army completely collapsed. The peerless sages were the first to be killed. They could no longer bear the terror of death and fled. All of them were in a state of panic like stray dogs. Immediately after, the 8 regions alliance army in the distance had realized that the situation was bad. They were like a chaotic and noisy torrent of death that fled in all directions. Screams, shrill cries, and wails resounded through the world. On the huge battlefield, the army was defeated like a collapsing mountain, and everywhere the eye could see was a scene of utter defeat. We won. We actually won. Xiaohao's hair was disheveled, and his body was stained with blood. He stared blankly at this scene and watched his enemies flee for their lives. He seemed to be in a trance and still couldn't believe it. This time, the 8 regions alliance army had besieged the city of Tao Protector with all their might and set up an inescapable net. For the past few days, the entire ancient desolation domain had been unable to eat or sleep in peace. Every single one of them felt like a rock was pressing down on their hearts, and they were almost unable to breathe. It was even to the extent that they were prepared to fight to the death today. But who would have thought? They actually won. Not only did they resolve the danger of the city of Tao Protector falling, but they also defeated the 8 regions alliance army and forced them to flee. We won. Ruowu, laughing at the heavens, Yechun, Mi Hengzhen, and the others had dazed expressions on their faces. Every single one of them seemed to be in a sorry state, and their clothes were completely dyed red with blood. However, the space between their brows was completely bright. Kill! Alu roared loudly and intended to pursue them. However, he was stopped by Zhao Jingxian because this wasn't the time to pursue their enemies. Ha ha ha! We won. Our ancient desolation domain won. Old Toad roared with laughter, and he laughed to the point tears were flowing from his eyes. This battle was too difficult, too horrifying, and too difficult. It was utterly impossible to describe the pain and suffering it was unless one experienced it themselves. Swish! At this moment, The eternal night that covered the sky seemed like a myriad of streams that had returned to their origin, and it converged towards Xiaozhi. Moreover, her 1,000 clones had returned to her at this moment and fused into one. Even if she'd won, she still seemed to be so calm and didn't reveal any emotional fluctuations. It was like the intense battle and slaughter from before were insignificant. However, at this moment, the gazes of everyone had converged onto her slender figure, and their gazes carried admiration and gratitude. Everyone knew that the ancient desolation domain would be able to survive today, and the city of Tao Protector would be able to continue standing unharmed. Xiaozhi's contributions couldn't go unnoticed. It wasn't exaggerated to say that she'd turned the situation around by herself during this battle. She'd slaughtered her enemies like a hot knife through butter, and she'd swept through everything before her. She was like a peerless god of legend. How could anyone not feel grateful, and how could they not feel admiration and respect for her? However, Xiaozhi seemed as if she didn't notice at all. She just raised her head slightly and looked up at the sky. She who was bathed within the eternal night seemed as if she'd never fit into this world. Chapter 16:21. The Battle Realm of the Fairy Realm. The Broken Fog Mountain. Damn it, I finally found another treasure! The big black bird rubbed his golden claws excitedly, his eyes shining. It was a small mountain surrounded by a faint golden mist. It was only 100 feet high, with jagged rocks and plants that looked like they were made of gold. It was a beautiful sight. Lin Sun and the others stood in front of an ancient rock halfway up the mountain. In the crack of the rock, there was a blade of grass that was as straight as a sword. It was a foot high, as thick as a thumb, and as clear as gold. Its stem was covered with natural cloud patterns, and on both sides of the stem, there were 9 leaves that were as thin as cicadas' wings. Looking closely, the leaves were like a golden ladder, climbing up layer by layer. On the veins of each leaf, there was a golden flame jumping. 9-leaf golden spiritual grass. Every 1,000 years, 1 leaf will grow, and every 3,000 years, it will suffer a natural disaster. Only those who survive the disaster can continue to grow. This is a natural treasure, and it contains the power of the innate gold spiritual force. With a little refining, it can become a peerless flying sword with great lethality. The big black bird's face was full of joy. The most amazing thing is that this treasure can be used as a natural divine material, which is immeasurable for refining a natal holy weapon. This 9-leaf golden spiritual grass is already 9,000 years old, and it has gone through 3 heavenly disasters. It is the best time to pick it. Lin Sun started to work while listening. Just like the night sky jade vine, there was also a Tao pattern restrictive formation around the 9-leaf golden spiritual grass. The big black bird reminded him, "Kid, according to the original agreement, this 9-leaf golden spiritual grass should be given to me." Silver and Tian looked at him with disdain. With their master's character, how could he be greedy for something that belonged to him? This thieving bird was simply gauging the heart of a gentleman with the yardstick of a villain. It was disdainful. The big black bird ignored him directly. He had always been thick-skinned. At the same time, in a world far away from the fairy battle realm, on the peak of a majestic mountain surrounded by fairy energy, a flock of gold crows flapped their wings and flew in the sky, sprinkling down a magnificent golden light that covered the ancient buildings on the mountain in a layer of sacred golden light. Damn it! That shameless thief is obviously planning to capture all the treasures we've been nurturing in the fairy realm. At the peak of the mountain, Jiang Heng gritted her teeth, her beautiful eyes filled with anger. Her face was like beautiful jade, and her eyes were like clear springs. She wore a green dress and stood alone in the sea of clouds on the mountain peak. She was like an otherworldly fairy with peerless beauty. Even though she was angry at this moment, there was still a kind of astonishing beauty to her. In front of Jiang Heng, an 8 trigrams plate made from a tortoise shell floated in the air, forming a screen of light. Lin Sun and the others were reflected in the light screen. This was the medicine guiding star plate, which was connected to the Taoist pattern restriction formation near the 9-leaf gold spiritual grass. Through this treasure, one could observe the growth of the 9-leaf gold spiritual grass. In the beginning, Jiang Heng found the night sky jade vine being picked by Lin Sun when he was inspecting the divine medicine in the battlefield of flying immortals with this treasure. Junior sister Jiang Heng, the fairy battle realm is related to the legendary Kunlun ruins. It's a strange secret plane. We can only open a void tunnel to it once every 100 years. Next to her, a white-robed man appeared out of thin air and said, "We've already used it once, which means we can't do it again." The white-robed man was thin and had his hands behind his back. His hair was gray, and his eyes were sharp like divine light. His whole body emitted a majestic and boundless aura. He was obviously very young and handsome. He did not have much vicissitudes of life on him, but his aura was even more terrifying than that of a peerless saint. Eldest senior brother, in the past few days, that little thief has already stolen the Futian cold blue flower, the phoenix plume 5-grain root, the mysterious light of earth wood, and several other innate divine treasures. Jiang Heng was still indignant as he said, "In addition to that night sky jade vine and this 9-leaf gold spirit grass in front of us, almost all of the treasures that our Xuanji Dao sect has nurtured have been stolen by this little thief. Are we just going to watch?" The white-robed man who was addressed as eldest senior brother smiled. His eyes were deep and steamed with a frightening sharpness. He said, "Compared to the pagoda on this kid, these treasures are nothing. When the opportunity in the Kunlun ruins opens, I'll definitely make him spit out 10 times or 100 times what he took." His voice was clear like the ringing of morning bells and evening drums, but it revealed incomparable confidence. Jiang Heng's eyes lit up. "That's right. This little thief has the flying immortal token. He'll definitely go to the Kunlun ruins in the future. At that time, I'll settle the score with him." "Right." Suddenly, Jiang Heng thought of something and said, "Eldest senior brother, what's the origin of that little thief's pagoda? It's actually able to block the attack of the Great Sun Thunder Wheel?" The Great Sun Thunder Wheel was one of the ultimate treasures of the Xuanji Dao sect. It was born in the primordial chaos of the astral lightning world. Many years ago, in order to subdue this treasure, an emperor of the Xuanji Dao sect had personally taken action and directly refined the entire astral lightning world. Only then did he seize the opportunity to subdue this treasure and obtain it in one go. After that, because this treasure was extraordinarily powerful and contained the quintessence of the lightning Dao of a world, it naturally became one of the ultimate treasures of the Xuanji Dao sect. However, that pagoda had blocked the attack of the Great Sun Thunder Wheel and even caused eldest senior brother to personally take action. How could Jiang Heng not be curious? This pagoda has an extremely great origin. Countless years ago, it was already famous throughout the world and possessed unbelievable might. The white-robed man's eyes burned brightly as he said in a low voice, however, "I'm still not sure if it's the legendary pagoda." "You're not sure?" The white-robed man nodded while reminiscence suffused the space between his brows. "Yes, because a very long time ago, this pagoda vanished from the world during a great battle. That battle, a total of 6 emperor-level orthodoxies have been destroyed, and 19 worlds have fallen to the enemy's hands. Just the number of casualties alone is more than 30. Besides that, countless quasi-emperors, saint-kings, and great saints perished. That battle caused the entire starry sky to tremble and go silent." As he finished speaking, the space between the white-robed man's brows carried a wisp of shock. It was a period of darkness that could shock the ages. Destruction and slaughter affected countless worlds and living beings, and the heavy casualties were sufficient to be unforgettable. The Dao battle of the emperors during the primeval times? Jiang Heng seemed to have thought of something, and he couldn't help but gasp. That battle was a battle between emperor-level experts, and it was a battle between numerous colossi and primeval sects that reigned supreme in the starry sky. That battle was also called the Tao Battle of the Emperors. Eldest senior brother, you're saying that it's very likely that the pagoda appeared during the Tao Battle of the Emperors? At this moment, Jiang Heng felt shocked. The white-robed man nodded and said, "That's what I'm not sure about as well. After all, you know that after the Tao Battle of the Emperors came to an end, practically all the treasures that once shook the world were destroyed in the intense battle, and very few were able to remain intact and circulate out." Jiang Heng couldn't help but ask, "What exactly is the name of that pagoda?" The white-robed man patted Jiang Heng on the shoulder and said, "This pagoda involves a great deal, and the sect behind it was like a taboo during the primeval times. No one dared to speak rashly about it. I'll tell you when we head to the Kunlun ruins and capture that kid." Right at this moment, the tortoiseshell's 8 trigrams disc suddenly emanated a strange rumble, and then the scene that was originally revealed shattered and vanished along with it. Jiang Heng's beautiful face darkened, and he gritted his teeth and said, "The 9-leaf gold spirit herb was taken by that little bastard as well." The white-robed man fell into deep thought. Other than that pagoda, why did the creation cauldron appear as well? When the Tao Battle of the Emperors took place during the primeval times, it was clear that the core of the 9 regions, the ancient wasteland world, had already been destroyed. Could it be that there's something else going on? Looks like I must capture that kid when the Kunlun ruins opens and properly interrogate him. Back then, the ancient wasteland world was the place where most martial emperors died. In the distant sky, a green flood dragon that was over 30 meters long suddenly flew over and called out, "True disciple Ji Qian, listen up." The white-robed man's expression turned solemn as he cupped his hands and bowed. Ji Qian, the number 1 true disciple of the Xuanji Dao sect, an all-powerful peerless great saint. In the 9 regions, he could establish a sect and be revered by countless people. However, at this moment, he had a respectful expression as he bowed as a disciple. The Xuanji Dao sect's deep foundation was evident from this. A few days later, the flying immortal battle realm. It's finally coming to an end. Kuan Xiaoyu, Xue Qingyi, and Zhu Yingkong walked out of the underground cave they were hiding in. They looked up at the sky and felt a sense of relief. A golden crack appeared in the sky, and a strange and obscure power of order spread out from it. Today was the 10th day since the opening of the Flying Deity battlefield, and it was also the day that the Flying Deity battlefield would come to an end. I wonder if the camp of the ancient wasteland realm has been destroyed. Kuan Xiaoyu murmured. There won't be any accidents. Zhu Yingkong swore. With the pawns in the camp of the ancient wasteland realm working together, no matter how sturdy the city of Dao protectors that Lin Sun had built was, it would be useless. I hope so. Xue Qingyi sighed. So what if they destroyed the camp of the 8 regions? If Lin Sun didn't die, he would become a great threat to the 8 regions in the future. It's time to leave. At the same time, Lin Sun raised his head in the broken fog mountain. His eyes were deep and bright. This trip to the Flying Deity battlefield could be considered a complete victory for him. If there were no accidents, the structure of the 9 regions battlefield was destined to be rewritten. After all, the top forces of the 8 regions had been almost wiped out. Only Kuan Xiaoyu, Xue Qingyi, and Zhu Yingkong were left, and they were destined to not be able to cause any more trouble. The only thing Lin Sun was worried about was the safety of the camp of the ancient wasteland. Today is New Year's Eve. At 6 p.m., Goldfish found a golden red packet on the official WeChat account. 1,888 yuan in cash. Come and get it. Those who haven't added him opened WeChat, searched for the official account, and entered Xiaojinyu 233 to add him. Chapter 1622. In the sky, the power of the rules of order was rolling, and it was about to form a vortex passage. Lin Sun waited silently. In addition to killing enemies, he had also gained a lot from this trip to the battlefield of fairies. Now he had 8 fairies' tokens with enough war merits and Taoist luck. In addition, the spoils of war obtained from killing enemies were even more amazing. All kinds of magic materials, treasures, and rare treasures were piled up like mountains, and their value was immeasurable. At least for a long time, whether it was cultivation or refining holy treasures, he didn't have to worry about the shortage of materials. In addition, his progress in cultivation was also quite amazing. Especially after refining the night jade vine, 1 day of cultivation was equivalent to 100 days of cultivation, so Lin Sun's cultivation in the middle stage of True Sage was completely completed. It wouldn't be long before he could enter the late stage of True Sage. If this speed of cultivation was spread out, the whole world would be shocked. After all, the 9 regions battlefield had only been opened for 2 years. In these 2 years, Lin Sun had smoothly stepped into the Saint Realm from the top of the King Realm to the top of the Saint Realm. Now, his cultivation had reached the peak of the middle stage of Saint Realm. This speed of cultivation was shocking. The most incredible thing was that Lin Sun didn't become stronger for the sake of becoming stronger. Every step he took was extremely solid, far surpassing his peers. Otherwise, it would be impossible for him to be almost invincible among his peers. Generally speaking, every step of the Saint Realm was extremely difficult. In the ancient Desolation Realm, people of the Saint Realm were rarely seen in the world. Why? It was very simple, because they were cultivating in seclusion. For these true sages, there were almost countless examples of people cultivating in seclusion for thousands of years in order to break through. Lin Sun's ability to become a saint in just 2 years and make breakthroughs in the Saint Realm had a lot to do with this trip to the 9 regions battlefield. Only in the 9 regions battlefield could there be enough opportunities for a top saint to transform quickly. If Lin Sun hadn't chosen to enter the 9 regions battlefield but stayed in the ancient Desolation Realm, he probably wouldn't have been able to become a saint so quickly. Master, the secret realm of fairies is coming to an end. In this 3rd battle of the 9 regions, you should be able to bear the title of number 1 of the 9 regions. Little Silver suddenly spoke up excitedly. I heard that in the previous 2 9 regions battles, the 2 fellows who became the number 1 in the 9 regions became martial emperors in the following years. With your current strength, it won't be difficult for you to become an emperor in the future. Little Tianzai nodded in agreement. This time, in the Fairy Battle Realms competition, his master was unrivaled, and he was undeniably the strongest. The big black bird didn't seem to be convinced. It sneered and said, "Don't forget, I saved your master from a peerless great saint. I am the real number 1 in the 9 regions." Little Silver immediately shouted, "Thief bird, do you dare to fight with my master to see who's better?" Lil Tian's expression became unfriendly. The big black bird rolled its eyes and glanced at Lin Sun, asking tentatively, "Boy, do you want to play?" Lin Sun smiled brightly and agreed happily, "Okay." The big black bird laughed dryly and said, forget it. The fairy battle realm is coming to an end. What's the point of fighting? I will take a step back and let's share the first place in the 9 regions." Share the first place? That's too bad. It's better to compete with each other. As Lin Sun spoke, he took a step forward. But the big black bird, like a bird startled by the twang of a bowstring, dodged far away. Little Silver and Lil Tian couldn't help but sneer. It was obvious that the bird had a guilty conscience. Lin Sun stopped and didn't make a move. But the big black bird felt its cheeks burning, and it didn't mention the first place in the 9 regions anymore. Buzz. Soon, a huge vortex tunnel appeared in the sky. "Let's go." Without hesitation, Lin Sun took Little Silver, Lil Tian, and the big black bird and flew away. Ancient wilderness world city of Tao protectors, the battle had ended for several days. The battlefield full of blood and bones outside the city had been cleaned up. Now it was clean and tidy, without a speck of dust. Cheers and laughter could be heard in the city. Every expert of the ancient desolation realm looked relaxed and confident from the bottom of their hearts. The allied forces of the 8 regions had gone all out, but in the end, they returned in failure, leaving a ground full of corpses and blood. It could be said that they had suffered heavy casualties. According to the statistics, there were more than 100 sages who had been killed. This was a heavy blow to the allied forces of the 8 regions. For a long time to come, it was destined that they would not be able to organize a force of a similar scale to attack again. The price that the ancient wilderness paid was the destruction of the formation of the 4 great 8 regions. Miraculously, there were no casualties. That Lady Shia Solstice is too powerful. She seems to be invincible. I suspect that even Senior Lin Sun is no match for her. What are you talking about? No matter how powerful Lady Shia Solstice is, she is Senior Lin's confidant. That's what I admire most about him. By the way, today is the end of the Battle of Flying Immortals. I wonder if Senior Lin can come back safely. Bah! Don't jinx it. In the city, similar discussions could be heard continuously. Who do you think Big Brother will greet first when he comes back? At the same time, Old Toad and Alu were hiding stealthily in the dark. Looking at the 2 figures standing on the city wall in the distance, they both had a strange feeling. The atmosphere was too subtle. On the city wall, Shia Solstice stood alone. Her slender figure was shrouded in the darkness of the eternal night, like a statue. Since the end of the battle a few days ago, she had been standing there quietly without saying a word. And Zhao Jingxian was also waiting there for some reason. Shia Solstice stood there, and so did she. She had no intention of leaving. Definitely. Alu was about to say something, but he suddenly realized that although the question seemed to be a simple greeting, it was actually not simple at all. No matter who he greeted first, it seemed that it would make the other person unhappy. Alu muttered, "We brothers can't help with this kind of thing. Big Brother can only pray for himself." Look, Miss Jingxian is beautiful on the outside and intelligent on the inside. Her features are picturesque, and she's as elegant as a fairy. She's truly one of the most beautiful women in the world. What's rare is that she and Big Brother love each other, like a match made in heaven. Old Toad sighed ruefully. But at the same time, Miss Shia Solstice isn't bad at all. She's been living with Big Brother since a long time ago, and their relationship is extremely close. Furthermore, Alu, you've also seen Miss Shia Solstice's beauty. She's absolutely a peerless beauty that can bring calamity to a country, so beautiful that even the world pales in comparison. Big Brother dotes on her to the bone. Either one of these 2 girls is enough to make countless heroes bow down to them, but they just happen to be inextricably linked to Big Brother. Speaking up to this point, Old Toad looked conflicted and let out a long sigh. It's not easy to choose, it's really not easy to choose. Alu also sighed ruefully. Damn it, even we feel conflicted just looking at them, let alone Big Brother. He's definitely in even more pain. Old Toad chuckled. It's not that easy to enjoy the blessings of having 2 partners, especially Miss Jingxian and Miss Shia Solstice. Each one of them is a top-notch beauty in the world. How could they lower themselves to serve one man with others? The 2 of them conversed in a low murmur. On top of the city walls, the atmosphere was rather subtle. Shia Solstice stood there, the light of the eternal night shrouding her body. No one could see her face, making her appear mysterious and awe-inspiring. But as long as she stood there, she would always be the center of attention. Zhao Jingxian was dressed in a light purple dress. Her black hair fell over her shoulders and her face was unadorned. Her features were as elegant as a painting, her body was slender and graceful, and her skin was as fair as jade. Just by standing there casually, she exuded an air of nobility. This had something to do with the environment she had grown up in, and it was also inextricably linked to the true dragon blood flowing through her veins. The 2 of them had already stood there for several days. Anyone could discern that there was something off about the atmosphere between the 2 of them, so no matter if it was Xiaohao, Ruowu, or laughing at the heavens and the others, all of them had chosen to retreat at the first possible moment. It was to the extent that only the two of them had been standing on the enormous city walls for the past few days. I just hope Lin Sun returns soon. Otherwise, I'm really worried that a conflict will arise between the two of them. Xiao Hao sighed with emotion. He was drinking with laughing at the heavens, Ye Chen, and the others. Ye Chen smiled. Now that I think about it, Lin Sun has already become a saint, so it's time for him to choose a Tao companion. I just don't know who he likes the most. Laughing at the heavens said, if it was me, I would just keep anyone I like by my side. It wouldn't be so troublesome. Ye Chen instantly ridiculed. Why did I hear that you were bullied by a girl when you were young, and she forced you to run all over the place while naked? You were just short of crying for your parents. It was also from that time that you started clamoring about never touching a woman in your entire lifetime? Laughing at the heavens' face stiffened, and then he flared up with rage. I heard that a group of female cousins would hug and kiss you every single day when you were young, and that isn't all. Don't you feel ashamed that you've been fond of rouge since you were young? Ye Chen's face instantly darkened as well, and he gnashed his teeth. That's because I wasn't sensible when I was young. Laughing at the heavens gave tit for tat and refused to give in at all. So what if I ran all over the place while naked when I was young? Xiao Hao sat at the side. He wanted to laugh yet didn't dare to, and it was to the point his face twitched. These two fellows were simply born to be enemies, and they would fight each other as soon as they met. Neither was willing to admit defeat to the other, and it was simply too extreme. We're back! Suddenly, Ruo Wu's delighted and pleasantly surprised voice resounded from outside the hall. At this moment, all the cultivators in the city of Tao Protectors noticed that an enormous vortex had suddenly appeared extremely far away in the sky. After that, a dazzling ray of light flashed out from within it, and then it swiftly transformed into a tall and slender figure in a moon-white robe that fluttered with the wind. He seemed otherworldly like a banished immortal. Surprisingly, it was Lin Sun. Xia Ji and Zhao Jingxian, who'd been waiting on the city wall, had practically simultaneously shot their gazes over. I misspelled a letter in the previous chapter, and it should be Xiaojinyu 233. Everyone, just open WeChat and search for the official account. Grab red packets at 6 p.m. tonight. Chapter 1623. Lin Sun was back. At this moment, the clamorous and bustling noise in the entire city of Tao Protectors had vanished, and it was deathly silent. Countless eyes looked at the distant sky where Lin Sun stood alone like a banished immortal. This young man had wreaked havoc in the blood demon realm and besieged an entire city by himself. He had rebuilt the city of Tao Protectors and wiped out the coalition army of the 7 territories by himself. He had also defeated hundreds of peerless sages by the Black Cliff Sea and defeated 3 peerless figures, including Xueqingyi, to create an opportunity for a group of peerless figures in the ancient Desolation realm to enter the Yuan magnetic secret realm. Over the past 2 years, his deeds had spread throughout the 9 territories battlefield. He was like the sun in the sky, shining like a legend. Now, he had returned from the fairy battlefield alive. It's good that he's back. At this moment, Xiao Hao, Ruo Wu, and the other peerless sages were completely relieved. They felt extremely relaxed. At first, they were all worried that Lin Sun would be suppressed by the peerless figures from the 8 territories when he went to the fairy battlefield. He might even be killed. But fortunately, he was back, safe and sound. However, when Xiao Hao and the others were about to go to greet him, they all stopped and their expressions changed. Because it was not their turn to fight yet. Lin Sun felt a sense of relief when he returned and saw that the city of Tao Protector was completely intact. The city of Tao Protectors was still there after 10 days, which meant that the ancient Desolation realm was safe and sound. This was undoubtedly the best news. But soon, Lin Sun's eyes narrowed and his pupils widened little by little. He stared at the beautiful figure on the top of the city of Tao protectors, almost unable to believe his eyes. Xie? Lin Sun's heart trembled. Before the arrival of the peerless realm, Xie floated away from the star-chest sea and went to a dark portal like the eternal night. Then she disappeared. Since then, Lin Sun had experienced 10 years of fighting in the peerless realm. Then, he returned to the mortal world and traveled all over the territory of the Empire. Later, he went to the bloodthirsty battlefield and the mulberry forest. After returning to the ancient desolation realm, he started his journey to the 9 territories battlefield. Until now, more than 10 years had passed. For more than 10 years, how could Lin not worry about Xie, who had been missing for a long time? However, he did not expect to see the most familiar figure in his memory appear on the tall city wall that he had built with his own hands as soon as he returned from the fairy battlefield. This was undoubtedly a huge surprise, and it was even more delightful than a great victory. In this world, there was nothing more delightful than a reunion after a long separation. However, when Lin Sun was about to step closer, he suddenly found that the atmosphere seemed to be a little strange. Apart from summer solstice and Zhao Jingxian, there was no one else on the city wall. That didn't seem right. Given Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao and Ruowu's perceptive abilities, they should have sensed him right away when he returned this time. Why hadn't he appeared yet? Big brother, Miss Xie and Miss Jingxian are waiting for you. Take it easy. Suddenly, Old Toad's voice rang in Lin Sun's ears. Lin Sun couldn't help but inwardly gasp and feel his scalp tingle. Only then did he realize what was wrong with the situation. Back then, Xie had said that if he wanted to marry a wife, he had to get through her first. Has there been a conflict between Xie and Jingxian? Even though Lin Sun was now at the peak of the Saint Realm, his heart was as firm as a rock, and he was used to great winds and waves. He still couldn't help but feel a headache at this time. But he didn't show any abnormality on his face. He smiled and walked towards the top of the city wall. At this moment, Old Toad, Alu, Xiaohao, laughing at the heavens, Yechen and others who were hiding in the dark all widened their eyes and felt worried for Lin Sun. Lin Sun, you're back. To everyone's surprise, Zhao Jingxian took the initiative to speak first. Her smile was bright and beautiful, and her red lips and white teeth were shining brilliantly. Her eyebrows were full of undisguised joy. Before Lin Sun could speak, Zhao Jingxian looked at Xie and said naturally, "Look, Xie is also here. I believe you must be very surprised and pleasantly surprised." Lin Sun nodded subconsciously, and then immediately cursed in his heart. However, after careful observation, he didn't find any trace of displeasure on Zhao Jingxuan's face, so he calmed down a little. At this time, Zhao Jingxian said with a smile, "Now that I see you back, I'm completely relieved. You guys talk. I haven't seen you for many years. I believe you must have a lot to talk about. I'll go back and have a rest first. In the evening, I'll call my friends to hold a dinner for you." As she said, she cast an encouraging look at Lin Sun, and then turned around and left. From beginning to end, he hadn't been sloppy at all. After he was done speaking beautifully, he turned around and left in a carefree and unrestrained manner. Old Toad, Alu and the others in the dark couldn't help but be amazed by his demeanor and bearing and couldn't help but feel admiration for him. Miss Jingxian's means were amazing. She didn't make a scene, nor did she fight tit for tat. Instead, she took the initiative to take a step back, which helped Lin Sun avoid a dilemma and preserved his dignity. She had a perfect sense of propriety which was very beautiful. Even Ruowu, who was a woman, could not help but sigh in admiration. This Lady Zhao really has a beautiful and exquisite heart. A delicate situation that would have given any man a headache was resolved by her with just a few words. It was just like the spring breeze and rain, moistening everything silently. Lin Sun couldn't wait to give Zhao Jingxian a big hug in his heart. Such a private thing was watched by so many people. Once some disputes were found, it would be easy to make a joke. You seem to be very happy? Xia Ji suddenly opened her mouth. Her voice was clear, clean, and sounded like the tinkling of nature. Lin Sun was stunned and couldn't help laughing. How can I not be happy to see you? As he spoke, he had already come to the top of the city wall. At a glance, he could see that Xia Ji was no longer the young girl he had not seen for more than 10 years. She was slender and her waist was like a willow. Standing there, she had an outstanding bearing and was almost as tall as Lin Sun. But I'm a little unhappy. Xia Ji's voice was calm. She turned around and stared at Lin Sun with a pair of eyes as clean and bright as stars. She said seriously, in addition to her, how many other women have you found over the years? Lin Sun almost broke out in a cold sweat. He coughed and said, Xia Ji, it's not easy for us to meet again. Can we not talk about this now? Xia Ji nodded and said, Yes, I never refuse your request. You once promised me that when you want to marry a wife, you must get my consent first. Lin Sun said, Of course I remember this. Speaking of this, he couldn't help but feel helpless. He subconsciously raised his hand and wanted to rub Xia Ji's head, which was a habit he had developed many years ago. But at this moment, he hesitated and his hand stopped in the air. Xia Ji reached out and picked up his hand. She naturally put it on her head and said, It's not that I don't agree to marry a wife for you. I don't care how many you want to marry. But I'm worried that you will gradually become a burden. There was a rare trace of depression in her clear voice. This made Lin Sun feel an inexplicable pain in his heart. He held Xia Ji in his arms and took a deep breath. No, it won't happen. Xia Ji's body was slightly stiff, and then became soft and warm. She put her head close to Lin Sun's shoulder and murmured, Since I woke up, my world was dark until I met you. Lin Sun, you can't leave me. Lin Sun hugged her more tightly. When he was in Feiyun village, Xia Ji had murmured this sentence in her sleep. But he didn't realize until today that he had always been the irreplaceable one in Xia Ji's heart. That night, a feast was held in the hall where Lin Sun lived. Like an impeccable hostess, Zhao Jingxian arranged every detail of the feast in an orderly manner. The place was filled with distinguished guests, and they toasted each other while laughing and chatting happily, and it drew out a beautiful scene under the night sky. It was also on this night that everything that had happened in the fairy battle realm was told by the big blackbird, which caused many people to cheer loudly. One should enjoy life to the fullest. Don't let the wine cup be empty to the moon. In the Battle of Fairies, Lin Sun killed all the top figures of the 8 regions and returned with a great victory, becoming the real number 1 in the Battle of the 9 regions. In front of the city of Tao Protectors, the army of the 8 regions was defeated and returned in low spirit. The camp of the ancient desolation was safe from danger. The 2 battles had invisibly changed the pattern of the Battle of the 9 regions. The 8 regions, which had lost all their top forces and suffered heavy casualties, could no longer threaten the camp of the ancient desolation from now on. At the end of the feast, Lin Sun made a decision. From tomorrow on, the camp of the ancient desolation would take the initiative to attack and would not stop until the 8 regions were destroyed. The night was as dark as ink. After the guests left, only Lin Sun, Xia Ji and Zhao Jingxian were left in the huge hall. Old Toad and Alu tactfully left with Little Silver and Little Tian. The big black bird didn't want to leave, saying that it wanted to discuss with Lin Sun about dividing the spoils. But it was directly taken away by Old Toad. No matter how loudly it shouted, it didn't work. This bird is too greedy. Lin Sun couldn't help laughing. At this time, Xia Ji had eaten and drunk enough and fell asleep quietly as usual. Of course, she naturally occupied Lin Sun's bed, just like many years ago. Jingxian, you're not angry today, are you? Lin Sun looked at Zhao Jingxian. The two sat side by side on the steps in front of the eave. The lamp swayed, sprinkling mottled light and shadow. Zhao Jingxian gently nestled her head on Lin Sun's shoulder and looked at the night sky in the distance. She said softly, Don't worry. How can I be angry with Xia Ji? She may be very powerful, but I feel that she has always been incompatible with this world and has a kind of unspeakable loneliness. I'm very happy that you are the only person she cares about. At least, she won't be lonely anymore." In the distance, there was a burst of bustling noise. The practitioners in the city were still gathering and celebrating. In the room, Xie Ji slept soundly. Beside him was a beautiful woman who was as gentle as water. Sitting quietly, listening, watching and feeling, a silent smile gradually appeared on Lin Sun's lip. He hadn't been so happy for a long time. The calm and steady feeling of joy filled his heart like a full warm current. Lin Sun would never forget this moment for the rest of his life. Chapter 1624. The crescent moon shone over the 9 provinces. Some were happy while others were sad. While the camp of the ancient desolation was celebrating Lin Sun's victory, the camp of the 8 regions was gloomy. A few days ago, the defeat of the allied forces of the 8 regions was still vivid in their minds. A few days later, the bloody news of the Battle of the Fairies came back. For a moment, the camp of the 8 regions was restless. Everyone was terrified. Even when the 8 regions joined forces and went all out, they couldn't shake the city of Tao, protector of the ancient desolation. Now, even the leaders of the 8 regions were killed by Lin Sun alone. In the end, only Kuan Xiaoyu, Zhu Yingkong, and Xue Qingyi were lucky enough to survive. This was like a bolt from the blue. That Lin Sun, how could he be so powerful? Countless people were shocked. Lin Sun was simply an invincible demon. His hands were stained with blood, and he was so powerful that it almost made people despair. No. Qi Wushu, the prince of my clan, is so powerful. How could he die in the Battle of the Fairies? Some people couldn't accept the bad news and roared angrily. Qi Wushu, Lai Qian, Shi Pohe, Hua Hongxiao, Jian Qinchen. Each of them was a leader of a region. They were unparalleled and looked down on their peers. They were like suns, shining brightly and shining alone. But now, these peerless figures, who should have continued to shine in the future, had all died in Lin Sun's hands. This was undoubtedly too terrifying. It was enough to make anyone tremble in fear. It's over. The allied forces of the 8 regions attacked with all their strength, but they returned in failure with heavy casualties. Now, even the battle in the Battle of the Fairies has ended with a crushing defeat. Is the pattern of the Battle of the 9 regions really going to change? Many people's faces were deathly pale, and they were in a daze. In the previous 2 battles of the 9 regions, countless sages from the 8 regions had crushed the camp of the ancient desolation easily. How glorious was that! But now, was that glory going to be gone? Damn it! It's all that Lin Sun's fault. That damned bastard! If it weren't for him, how could those 2-legged sheep in the ancient desolation have today's strength? There were even more people who wanted to go crazy with hatred. When the realm of ancient desolation had first opened, they hadn't taken the realm of ancient desolation seriously at all. They had regarded the realm of ancient desolation as a 2-legged sheep that they could trample, humiliate, and slaughter at will. As a matter of fact, the ancient desolation realm's camp was really weak at the beginning. They could only run around and hide. It was extremely difficult for them to survive. And all these changes started from Lin Sun. At first, he had been trapped in the blood demon world, but he had single-handedly slaughtered his way through the blood demon world, causing turmoil in the blood demon world. Everyone in the 8 regions remembered his name. Later on, he rebuilt the city of Tao protectors and annihilated the allied forces of the 7 regions. Only then did the 8 regions start to pay attention to him and raise their guard. Because of this, Xue Qingyi joined forces with a group of top sages to set up an inescapable net on the shore of the Black Cliff Sea to kill Lin Sun. But in the end, Xue Qingyi and the others suffered a crushing defeat. The situation of the 9-region battlefield had also changed since then. Among the top figures of the ancient desolation realm who returned from the Yuan magnetic secret land, a group of real top sages appeared, which turned the situation of the ancient desolation realm around. It was also at this time that the 8 regions became truly vigilant. They all regarded Lin Sun as their #1 enemy, and almost gathered all their forces to kill him. Unfortunately, they had failed again. The battle of the fairy realm had failed, and the all-out attack of the allied forces of the 8 regions had also failed. At this point, Lin Sun had single-handedly thrown the 9-region battlefield into chaos and changed the situation of the 9 regions. And because of this, the 8 regions had also fallen into turmoil. Defeated in the hands of an unknown woman, in the absolute Yin realm, Zhu Yingkong sat dejectedly on a chair, his eyes lost. When he heard the news of the allied forces of the 8 regions paying a visit, he felt as if he had been struck by lightning. Originally, he, Kuan Xiaoyu, and Xueqingyi had placed their hopes on him, thinking that as long as they could destroy the city of Dao protectors of the ancient desolation realm, the allied forces of the 8 regions would still be invincible. Who would have thought that the allied forces of the 8 regions would also be defeated? Zhu Yingkong clenched his fists. His eyes were about to pop out of their sockets, and his breathing was heavy. He looked like he was about to go berserk. "Brother!" Zhu Yingxue walked into the hall. "Scram! All of you scram!" Zhu Yingkong roared. In the past, she was the one he doted on the most, but now, his eyes were like those of a ferocious beast, scaring Zhu Yingxue so much that she almost crawled out of the hall. "It's over, it's really over this time. If I had known this would happen, I would have listened to Xueqingyi and killed that little bastard at the beginning of his rise. Unfortunately, it's too late." Zhu Yingkong's body trembled with anger. "Gather all the forces in the city. Without my order, no one is allowed to take a step out of the city." In the northern underworld realm, Kuan Xiaoyu's face was ashen and cold to the extreme. He had also learned of the grievous news, and his heart was bleeding. Right now, he could only gather all the forces he had and prepare for the worst. Fortunately, we have the city of Dao protectors. This city was built with the blood, sweat, and tears of countless sages. I hope it can protect the northern underworld realm from destruction, Kuan Xiaoyu murmured in his heart with a wooden expression. He had a premonition that darkness would descend for a period of time. Blood Demon World. Xueqingyi was drinking wine with a calm demeanor. He was neither happy nor sad, and no one could tell what he was thinking. However, the atmosphere in the hall was so oppressive that it was suffocating. The big shots standing in the hall were all anxious and fearful. After a long time, Xueqingyi put down his wine cup and sighed softly. "People don't recognize the cloud-soaring tree, and only when the clouds are high will the Tao be high. It's too late, it's all too late." His voice was bleak and lonely. "Young master," someone wanted to say something, but Xueqingyi waved his hand and interrupted him. "Listen to me, run as far as you can now. Perhaps, when the 9 regions battlefield comes to an end, you might have a chance to return to the Blood Demon ancient realm alive." "Young master, the 8 regions are not powerless to fight again." Someone gritted his teeth and was unwilling to give up. Xueqingyi was not annoyed. He picked up his wine cup and carefully sipped it. After a while, he said, "When the nest is destroyed, everyone is in danger. They can't be relied on." At the end of his words, his voice was low, and there was a vague hatred that was suppressed to the extreme. "Even so, we still have the city of Dao protectors," someone else said. "No one was willing to give up and flee like stray dogs." "Ha!" Xueqingyi revealed a mocking smile. "No matter how strong this city is, can it compare to the city of Dao protectors of the ancient wasteland world that withstood the all-out attack of the 8 regions coalition army? Don't underestimate Lin Sun anymore. Those who underestimate him in the 9 regions battlefield are either dead, or like me, can only feel sorry for themselves." After a pause, he stood up and swept his gaze across the crowd. He waved his hand and said, "If you want to stay, then stay." As soon as he finished speaking, he walked out of the grand hall. His silhouette was bleak, and had an indescribable sense of loneliness. "Young master, where are you going?" Someone cried out. "Where else can I go? Run." Ha 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 ha. Xuechingi's figure disappeared outside the hall without looking back. His laughter was filled with indescribable mockery. No one knew whether he was laughing at himself or at others. Everyone looked at each other in dismay. The next morning, the vast universe arc floated in the sky above the city of Tao protectors in the ancient wasteland world. Lin Sun, Xia Ji, Xiaohao, Ruowu, Old Toad, Alu, laughing at the heavens, and other peerless sages gathered together. Countless experts of the ancient wasteland stood in the distance, watching from afar. They were here to send off the army. The atmosphere was solemn, and everyone's face was full of expectation. It had been 2 years. The ancient wasteland, which had been suppressed and invaded for a long time, was finally going to launch a counterattack and attack the 8 regions coalition. It was like a miracle. In the past years, it was almost impossible in the previous 2 battles of the 9 regions. But today, the impossible had finally happened. The shame of the sages would be washed away today. Xiaohao and the others were excited and their blood was boiling. It had not been easy. The blood and hatred of countless ancestors finally had a chance to be repaid with blood. It was time to wash away the shame that the ancient wasteland had suffered in the past. Lin Sun's black eyes were like lightning as he glanced at the crowd and gently spat out 2 words. "Let's go. Let's go. We will eat the flesh of our enemies and drink the blood of the 8 regions." Boom! The vast universe arc let out a roar. Under the gaze of countless people, it carried Lin Sun and the others through the clouds. "Victory!" Someone roared, and his voice shook the sky. "Victory! Victory!" In the huge city of Tao protectors, men and women, regardless of their cultivation, they all shouted at this moment with excitement and longing. The world was filled with thunderous shouts. Zhao Jingxian stood on the city wall and looked at the vast universe arc that was gradually disappearing in the horizon. She murmured in her heart, "There are many heroes in the ancient wasteland. Since ancient times, why should we be afraid of war? The blood of a man should be brave and heroic. His heart should be like iron. Let's try to mend the sky and crack it." Absolute in territory. After the time it took for an incense stick to burn, the vast universe arc rushed into the territory controlled by the ancient in territory unimpeded. On the treasured ship, Lin Sun closed his eyes and rested. He was as quiet as a stone statue. Xia Ji sat on one side, and the table was filled with all kinds of delicious food. She was eating one bite at a time with a tranquil look on her face. The speed of the vast universe arc was extremely fast. It moved forward in a straight line, and it actually didn't encounter any obstructions along the way. It wasn't long before a city appeared on the horizon in the distance. The city was huge and majestic, and it was completely suffused with the color of blood. It seemed extremely dazzling. This was the ancient In Territory's city of Tao protectors. It was grand in scale, and its walls were tall and wide. Every single brick was poured with dark red blood and paved with ghastly white bones. It was the blood and bones of countless ancestors in the ancient Desolation territory. At this moment, Zhu Yinkong's expression was livid as he stood on the towering city of Tao protectors. His eyes were wide open in disbelief. He hadn't expected that Lin Sun would really come. Moreover, Lin Sun's first target was the ancient In territory. "Young master, that demon Lin is here." The expressions of many nearby changed drastically, and they felt as if they were sitting on pins and needles. "Why are you panicking? We'll be invincible as long as we defend this city." Zhu Yinkong took a deep breath, and a wisp of ruthlessness flashed through his eyes. He said in a low voice, "Give the order to activate the city barrier formation. Goldfish will be visiting her relatives tomorrow. I've already used up all the draft. Please forgive me if the updates in the next few days aren't stable."